Good evening, everyone. I will now call to order the Ashland Planning Board meeting for Thursday, August 26, 2021. It's 7:17 p.m. Good evening, all. So Peter, we've typically been asking the clerk to read the announcement regarding the remote meeting. Could you cover that for us in Lakshmi's absence, please?
I don't have it in front of me, so you're gonna have to give me a second.
That's fine. I mean, we're supposed to read it, right?
Yeah.
100 at this point. Yep. I have it.
Do you have it?
Believe so.
Slow to the.
I don't have it. I don't have it. Do you have it, Peter? I can just pull it off the town website.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Is there a place to look? I can help.
The agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. It's coming. I'm just trying to admit people into two things.
Okay, I've got it.
You got it? Okay.
The town of Ashland response to the COVID-19 coronavirus is currently following guidance from the Ashland Board of Health, Mass DPH, and CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread in accordance with the governor's order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. All public meetings are being conducted remotely. The following information is also provided for members of the public who would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link in the planning board agenda for this evening to join the public meeting webinar. If prompted, please enter meeting ID 865-1264-6250, passcode 541553. Okay, with that said, I'd like to briefly just go over the agenda for this evening and talk through the items that we're going to be covering, some of which will be continued. So the first item for this evening is the continued public hearing for 90 Concord Street special permit and site plan review. This is the Minda School project. The second item on the agenda is a continued public hearing on 100 Chestnut Street special permit and site plan review. This item will be continued until Thursday, September 9th. The next item on the agenda was the continued public hearing on 355 West Union Street site plan review. This item will be continued until Thursday, September 9th. 0 Magunko Road site plan review. This item was posted as being for this evening. However, it is going to be continued until Thursday, September 9th. The next item was an A&R plan for 100 through 130 Chestnut Street. This does relate to the 100 Chestnut Street special permit project. This item will be continued until Thursday, September 9th. We will cover the open meeting law violation. We will cover that item this evening and respond to that. And then otherwise, they're just administrative matters for the board after that. So the main item of business is 90 Concord Street this evening. Peter, does that cover everything from your perspective? Is that accurate?
Yes, that is 100% accurate. Covers it all.
All right, great. So with that said, I think high level order of operations for the Mindes, the 90 Concord Street discussion. I think we're going to open up with an update from the applicant based on open items and outstanding requests from our last meeting. So we're going to get an update and get some additional information. From there, we'll have some planning board discussion based on that presentation. After that discussion, I think we're going to, the board will itself have a discussion about where it is from the perspective of closing the public hearing on this matter. And depending on the consensus of the board, we'll either take a vote to close the public hearing, or we will not take a vote to close the public hearing, at which time we will take public comment. We've had a great deal of input via all forms of communication regarding this. So we've also had 2 previous meetings with some pretty significant public comment as part of that. So I think to the extent we do take public comment this evening, we are going to limit the time on it to about 20 minutes. And we're going to keep some real rigor to that public comment in terms of time people speak, and as well as single trips to the podium for this evening. From there, regardless of how that kind of goes, I think we're going to we're then going to spend the kind of balance of the time looking at talking about terms and conditions and drafting terms and conditions with the goal that at the next meeting that we would ideally, with a full board seated, be able to vote on that. So with that said, I'd open it up to the applicant to take it away.
Bill, I've made you a co-host. I think you can lead off, and then whomever you would like to hand it off to, I can make it. I can also make a co-host.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will share my screen and we will get underway here. Everyone see that okay? So just quickly, as we've done in the past, I have several members of the design team with me tonight from Stimson Studio, from Niche Engineering. We have the OPM on board, of course, here, and we have members from Shamet Construction. So I'll let everybody introduce themselves as they speak. But briefly tonight, we did want to touch upon a couple of issues that we heard and we've been talking about as a result of our last meeting. And one of them is the memorial site out back around that existing oak tree. And we also wanted to touch base, excuse me, on the parking in the back. As a result of some of our meetings with the Conservation Commission, they've requested some revisions to that parking in back, and we just want to keep both boards, abreast of these changes throughout this process. So with that, let's look at that memorial site. This image up here is just to remind everybody, we talked about this last time, where the memorial site is and the existing oak tree in relation to the existing Mendez School, which you see here in purple, and the new proposed school is kind of outlined in red. This dark gray area is, kind of the construction zone needed to construct the new school. It's a depth of excavation. And now we did, as a result of our last meeting, hire an arborist. They met on site with several members of the community to analyze the tree and look at the existing conditions. And they have since provided a report to us, which we have shared with Peter. And I'm not sure if it got to everybody on the planning board yet, but that is out there.
Just to stop you, just to let everyone know that, yes, that report has been shared with all members of the planning board, and it's actually been posted up on the town's website for public viewing.
Nice. Perfect. And I'll kick it over to Mike Quinlan, because I know he's on the line, because Mike was on site with the arborist. And Mike, if you could give us kind of an update synopsis of that meeting, that'd be helpful.
Yes, thanks, Bill, and good evening, everyone. Mike Quinlan, Compass Project Management. We are the owner's project manager for this project, the town of Ashland. So we met on site with Peter, with Michael Herbert, and the arborist, and Paul Kendall, chair of the SBC, and the landscape architect. And they did a quick evaluation of the tree, took photos of it. But in the discussion, when we filled them in on the design, as Bill has shown here, it became quickly apparent to them that it would not be a candidate for saving due to the fact that 50% of its root structure has already been compromised by the concrete wall, and the proximity of the construction to the north side would compromise more of the root structure. That's all filled in the report for more detail, but I'm happy to answer questions on that or if you'd like just to have Bill go through the rest of the presentation.
I think it'd be good if we went through the report, Mike, if you could summarize at this point.
Yeah, so basically what it comes down to, as I noted, the root structure is already compromised on half of the tree. And the arborist stated that given the size of the tree and the size of the canopy, that in order to for them to recommend that it be salvageable, the radius from the center of the tree for a protected area would need to be about 37 feet. So that, as shown in that green circle, I believe, Bill, is that accurate, reflecting that?
Ramon, can you wait?
No.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that green circle was. So
It's just the canopy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Canopy.
So, so right now, as you can see, what you can see from this is that gray zone is the limit of the area that would need to be used for construction, and that includes excavation, and part of that excavation is sloped edge, as well as some scaffolding in order to assemble the facade of the building. So that zone is needed in order to construct the building. And so that's well within a 37-foot, I believe we're close to about 8 feet or so from the tree in where the proposed construction is. So it's well within that. It's not close to that number as outlined by the arborist, which is why they're stating that given the design and the means of methods of construction, that they don't think that it could be salvaged with the construction. Bill, am I missing anything? I think that pretty much covered it. They were pretty clear on site pretty quickly that given the dimensional constraints here, that they couldn't recommend that it be saved.
That's correct. That's basically the upshot of the report.
The other thing to bear in mind, one thing I didn't mention was, again, in order to build the building, it's approximately a two-story tall facade there. Even though it's a gym, it's basically almost 2 stories in height. And so in order to do that, some large limbs, horizontal limbs would need to be cut in order to accommodate that construction. And that's another way that the tree would be further weakened by having that done, by having those limbs removed in order to allow for the construction.
And Mike, could you clarify? I thought the report said 30 feet. Is it 30 or 37?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, maybe he said 37 on site, but I think you're right.
The 33 feet.
Yeah, it's 33 feet in the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that. I
Yeah.
didn't have the number in front of me.
Yeah.
And if I recall that the diameter of that green circle that's being shown there is 50, so the radius would be 25. Just to give you an idea of where relative size to that.
I believe the canopy is actually they estimated at approximately 70 feet. So the radius would be about 35 feet there. The crown height they referred to as 50 feet. That's
no. I'm talking about the drawing. When we did the drawing, I believe that was 50. That was 50
That's
feet.
right,
So
Paul.
to give you an idea what that is, so the radius shown with that circle that is in the picture is 25.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
So many numbers. So the actual report is 33.
Correct.
Thank you.
For what would be called the protected area in order to protect the tree.
So with that, I'd like to move on if that's okay with everyone. So having said that, what does it look like? What is the site? What is this area going to look like when the tree is gone? Now we talked about last meeting that when we'd cut the tree down, we'd cut it flush to the ground, so we're not disturbing the earth below. So it'd be cut right at grade level, and then as has always been part of the plan, this area does get landscaped. There's a new fence that gets put around it. what we're showing here is like a new interpretive sign, just a monument to kind of detail and describe what this area is here. And then the nice part about this is that now this this area that was behind the school, that it was just kind of tucked away in the in the forested area back there, is now kind of very visible on the approach to the school. So it does lend itself to a learning opportunity like we've spoken about, and maybe some sort of reuse in the tree. So just to give everyone a sense of where we are, the parking lot is over here, the main parking lot, and this is the main entry into the school here. So as everyone's coming in here, they will be walking past this area, and they will, there will be a chance to stop, look at the sign, read the sign, like that. So, and then when we start talking about, possible ideas for reuse, since we do have to cut this tree down, there's a couple of ideas that were thrown around or mentioned last meeting. And, we could take some of this wood and possibly use it as a bench, as you see here, or maybe take a cross section of the existing tree and kind of use it as a teaching opportunity where you're kind of tagging different events to the growth rings. And you kind of see two options here. So we do, so it is our intention, of course, to respect the site itself. And since we do have to cut that tree down, we do have the opportunity to turn it into something. So the last item that I wanted to talk about was this parking in the back. This is a couple of spaces in the back of the building. Per our meetings with the Conservation Commission, they had requested that we slide this parking over 16 feet to get it away from this isolated wetlands area. Now, at the last CONSCOM meeting, they had made the determination that they want to maintain a 25-foot no disturb zone around this wetlands area. So we are actually going to be looking at this parking again, shifting it down a little bit and maybe splitting these spaces, just so we can maintain that 25-foot no disturb zone around that isolated wetland areas. And again, I mentioned this here at this committee just to kind of inform both committees as to the back and forth that's going on with the plan. And with that, that's the presentation for tonight. So we'll entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you. To the planning board, to the members that are here this evening, what other questions or follow-up do we have on the materials presented here, or any of what has been shared? I feel this would be a good time for us to discuss that.
Just a simple question about this slide that's shown. Obviously, we're only 60%, I think, into the construction drawing process. So is this diagram, I assume, is proposed, and there might be still design elements going in about what type of trees they are, the exact placement of the trees, But this slide is meant to show an example of that this area will become a garden, and what its potential would be, but not necessarily its 100% design. Would that be correct?
That would be correct. And maybe I'll let Eddie and Ramon speak to tree type and plantings,
Yeah, good evening, everybody. This is Eddie Marshall from Stimson Studio. And what you're looking at for this zone, as you would at the drop-off area, the lighter green is actually proposed to be taller grasses and perennials, with the darker green being more shrubs, and there'd be low shrubs, things like sweet fern, low junipers. There's some low taxus out there, a low growth sumac. So think about everything on that north side. It was kind of the woodland coming, from kind of the northern part of the site, kind of landing here. And so it would have kind of a generous planting of shrubs. Then the grasses would be both Liriope, Pennisetum, Panicum, which they look great in September when kids are coming back to school. And then to focus on the trees, obviously we're looking at a 4-inch caliper tree that upon installation, that would probably be 14 to 15, maybe 16 feet in height, and that 4-inch caliper is the diameter of the trunk. And then we also, and so we want to think about, do we replant another oak tree, which seems appropriate? Maybe inclined to do a swamp white oak, which does a little bit better in this type of, now that it was a tree that was planted very much in a woodland. Now it'll feel a little bit more urban. The swamp white oak actually does better there. And then for flowering trees, we're thinking things like the dogwood, maybe a flowering cherry or flowering apple, something that will really start to punctuate kind of the seasonal change. But I think to the point that this is still very much a planting design that's in flux, and I could see maybe augmenting this with some additional flowering trees and shade trees as well. I also wanted to point out that the grading, the concrete wall will stay. So that framework on the southern side won't be touched, but we bring the grade up, and so you will actually just be seeing very little of that concrete wall that's currently there today.
Just as a follow-up question, Eddie, when we look at something like that 4-inch caliber tree, is there a certain size tree that is recommended for planting? Can a larger tree be planted what regulates that?
We typically gravitate towards that 4-inch caliper tree because of one, it has a nice size and presence at the day of installation. So the first time the school is opened, that tree will have a presence, and we can always go larger. So we can always find larger trees. What is important to note, and this is where we tend to play more of the long game, I'd rather plant more of 4-inch caliper trees than jumping to 5 or 6 or 7-inch caliper trees, because after 10 years, your 4-inch caliper tree is actually bigger. And so that is, and so we'd also look at different growth rates for trees.
Can you explain that, Eddie? I don't understand.
So, this is an interesting thing that happens. So the trees really don't put on a lot of size until they reestablish the root zone that they had in the nursery. And so for the fact that the smaller tree had a smaller root zone, it reestablishes that root zone faster. So the larger tree needs more time and energy to reestablish the root zone. So once this tree gets its baseline of roots back, then it's going to kick into gear in terms of growth rate. And after, I would say for things like oak and maple, we're probably not planting ash, but those types of trees, or like a sweet gum or those type of shade trees, they will be putting, once established, and they'll be putting on anywhere between 12, 15 to 18 inches of growth every year. And so after 10 years, the smaller tree will eclipse the larger one. It doesn't have the same impact on those first, say, 10 years. But if you want to play the long game, I would be, I'd rather have more trees planted just a little bit smaller, because then over time, the dividends it pays, I think it's really good for these type of settings, and how it will start to really enhance the setting of the school.
Eddie, could I ask, inside that grave site, what would be left of the tree, and is there?
So, excellent question. We would try to flush cut that stump as low as we can. so we don't want to disturb anything. Mindful of that, I don't know if there's any history about when they put in the concrete wall, but certainly when they built the concrete wall 50 years ago, there was a certain amount of disturbance in order to get that installed. But what we would like to do is really tread lightly inside the fence. And so we would look to kind of flush cut as close as we can. But what that means is still you're going to have maybe 4 or 5 inches of that stump remaining. And so then we were thinking, so in the other slide that Bill had shown, it does have an opportunity. Is there kind of a history lesson? But we would certainly want to work with everybody at the school if there's something that we can use to make this feel like an asset and doesn't feel like I want to pull the energy of everybody looking at a stump. And so I want to change the focus of what that could be.
Yeah, I was thinking about the renderings that were shown to the public at the town meeting, right? There wasn't a stump there. There was a smaller tree right inside that white fence area.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a larger tree right outside. Has there been thought about making that rendering happen? Essentially having
right, back to the point that we are not completed. I mean, we could, I guess one thing that would be good for us to test, and you bring up a good point. Do we actually try to bring a oak tree back inside this area? I was hesitant to want to plant any tree here only because we're not 100% sure where the graves could be. And so we were taking the approach of really step very lightly in this area. If we need to excavate to plant a tree, isn't it better to be outside the zone?
Yeah.
And so that is kind of where our logic left or ended in terms of what we would like to do. And so knowing that it's not 100% where the graves may be, let's not try and second guess ourselves.
I understand, Eddie. I'm trying to respond to some of the public comment we received as far as what people may have voted for and what the renderings showed. So I appreciate your detailed response.
Yeah, we can certainly bring it closer than what you're seeing here. I mean, we are, we would be wide open to that, and, being flexible in terms of and so I guess the other component of that, Anna, is we also want to find that sweet spot where 20 years from now, they're not lopping off branches because it's getting too close to the building. So, I mean, I'm all for planting the shade trees, and I think it'll be great. It'll be great to kind of set the tone of the entry when kids get out of the cars and things for the drop off. But so we kind of pulled it away a little bit more, only to have that kind of breathing room over time. So there'd be certainly less encroachment of these trees against the building years from now.
And then the other question I had is there, and I don't know if if you're the right person to ask, and maybe the first question is, I guess, who might be the best person to ask questions about the MSBA process and kind of the impact of the design relative to the site? Would that be you, Eddie, or is there?
I would defer to Bill
on
that one.
So Bill, can you tell me if there's been any discussion with the MSBA about whether shifting the configuration, not the location of the building, but the shape of that corner would in some way delay or prevent the funding model that we have with MSBA? Has that discussion ever happened?
I'll respond to this, and I'll let Mike Quinlan chime in too, and maybe even Paul Kendall. We haven't had any discussions with the MSBA about shifting or reconfiguring this building, but I think, as we mentioned last time, the minute you kind of reshape this building, you have to go back to the MSBA. We're kind of locked into the plan and the spaces as they are now.
Has the MSBA confirmed that? In other words, has that question been raised with them that, hey, if we wanted to move that corner a little bit to allow for the 33 feet protection, what would that do to the project? Has that discussion occurred or been initiated?
So,
hasn't been initiated, but
I think I can handle this one, Bill. So the MSBA won't necessarily get involved in design questions like that, but obviously a major change like that, we would have to inform them and they would have to review it back against our original educational plan. But the bigger issue is moving that building back out of the tree is a 7-figure change cost-wise.
And just to be clear, I'm not asking about moving the building. I'm asking about taking that corner and reconfiguring it in some way, which is a different.
Yeah, I understand. The problem is that that's the gym. So it's not a space that's easily taken a chunk out of or adjusted. So that's kind of like a set sort of square. And, you know, you can't, because there's like basketball courts, we can't kind of make it more jagged, I guess is the point. So in terms of adjusting the design to meet that, we're also pretty far along in this process, right? Because we're looking to actually start construction in a couple of months. So redesigning that and all the structure involved in that would become very cost prohibitive and schedule delay. And schedule delays these days especially lead to significant increases in cost because of escalation. As you all may or may not be aware of. So that would be a significant change to the project, and it may not always seem like it, but it would be. That would be a very big change. And the other issue, I mean, because we did look at how we were siting this building, we did look at where it was placed, and actually part of the reason why it's placed where it is because we were trying to stay further as far out of the trees as possible and remove less. So that was, you know, part of the reason why it's that close and we weren't further into the woods. As well, there's a whole bunch of ledge or rock that needs to be removed. So moving the building further back also would require more removal of that, which again leads to that large expense if we were to look at that.
And Bill, you mentioned you have some prior experience with various buildings. Have you worked with MSBA projects previously?
Yes.
And have you been involved in prior projects where discussion has occurred with the MSBA about making such changes or similar changes?
No, usually, no. Usually this is a little unusual.
The MSBA, you know, won't get into design of the building. Like they just want to make sure that their standards are met and that their spaces are adequate. And you know, they do review the design, but they won't if towns wanted to design something a certain way, they won't necessarily say no unless it impacts educational program.
In other words, we could change the design in a way that does not disturb their process.
Oh, not at this stage. I'm saying earlier on. Any major design change like that, outside of the cost and schedule implications, would require us to basically stop the project and resubmit to the MSBA and get their review of it, because we have a agreed upon design with the MSBA that they've approved at this point.
Yeah, and I think the issue is it's not. You know, aside from the MSBA, shifting the entire building over isn't really an option. And reconfiguring this corner is not something that is easily done either from a design standpoint and would cause delays in this project.
I am disappointed to hear that an $85 million project cannot creatively come up with a solution on this. And I will leave it at that.
So, and sorry, I apologize. It's not actually the gym. That was the other area. This is the admin suite. Then
I will reiterate, for an $85 million project that we're not willing to think creatively about an admin wing is disappointing to me. But I'll leave it at that. That's one opinion on the board.
Yeah, I think to me it's much less surprising given my experience in the design and construction industry, that these things just have a ripple effect. The bigger the project, the bigger the ripple effect. And yeah, that process to me is kind of the normal design process, things pluses, minuses you have to consider. So likely is unfamiliar to people not used to that process. And it is frustrating because projects they're big and they're hard to steer. And actually, no matter how big the project is, even a small addition, a change late in the game has huge ripple effects through it. So I just wanted to jump in and explain that from the perspective I have as well.
I did review the agreement between the town of Ashland and the MSBA and the schedule that I was able to get today. It's not clear to me that we're so far along that we cannot entertain a discussion with the MSBA. They are welcome to say to us, no way, you cannot make any changes, it's too late. And that would certainly be a valuable data point for me in making my decision. Instead, I'm being told that they're not flexible, but we have not spoken to them.
The MSBA, in my mind, is not the problem here. The problem here is that given where we are, we're in permitting, so we're at the end stage of design, and so changes at this point become inordinately expensive and time consuming.
Right.
And as I mentioned, so while, you know, if this issue had been raised sort of earlier in the design process, it wouldn't have been an issue. It would have been easily adjusted, and the MSBA wouldn't care as long as we were meeting their standards. However,
we have not spoken to them. So when we say what the MSBA would do, that's based on
past experience.
On past experience without a discussion at this point. And we are at the permitting stage. The nature of permitting is that we're discussing the design. That's the whole. If the argument is that permitting is cumbersome, then there is no point to this review, right? So the review is happening. That's the nature of the permitting process. And there is an expense, of course, to any redesign. That's the nature of any development. What I'm trying to say is the effort and expense of a redesign on an $85 million project, it seems somewhat disingenuous to say this is just too darn complicated to raise with the MSBA to figure out how to solve this. It's a relatively minor issue.
Again, I don't think that's what's being said.
No.
And I think maybe we can save some of these discussions for when the board is actually discussing these issues, because I don't agree with that is actually what is being said by the applicants. So, and meanwhile, we may have other things that we need to talk about tonight.
I'd like to weigh in on this. Let me preface what I'm saying here with Ashland needs a new elementary school. I think that the summary of all of this proposal and this presentation is impressive. I think the building is impressive. I think it's a green building that's going to provide, 50, decades and decades of use to this community. And I think it's a great school, right? So I'm fully supportive of this project. I'm fully supportive of this proposal. I think this tree, I'm disheartened by the report here with regard to this tree and the conclusion that it can't be saved. I think this it saddens me. Like I'm one opinion on this board, but I think this tree and this monument was cast behind this building in the 50s. I think that that this is a chance to kind of correct that and put this center stage again. And I think this is a beautiful, huge, super old tree. And I really wish that we could have preserved it, right? And I think that what's on the site right now is this proposed design in terms of how we're going to make this beautiful going forward and make it attractive and celebrate it. I do. I think this is this is a thoughtful design, and I like the discussion I've heard in the proposal. It's not just we're going to cut the tree down, it's we're going to cut the tree down, but we're going to try to do this to rectify, right? So like when I put it all on the scales, right, it's balancing everything out on these projects and how we talk about and think about these projects, right? And so, I mean, the weight on the scale that says this is a really thoughtful project and it solves a need for Ashland, and it should be a physical plant that's a point of pride for us as a town, is significantly heavier and bigger than this tree, right? And so at the end of the day, I can't, you know, I understand that from again, as an individual member, I mean, I understand that at this stage where we are, it is incredibly time consuming and difficult to move things and make changes. Everything you has a massive ripple effect, and there is a larger timeline at play, and there's a desire to build this and move everything forward on this. So I wish we had perhaps made some different choices earlier in the process and chose to save this tree and have this huge mature white oak here in this grave site. I wish we had made different choices, but I think we are trying to do the best we can with this. I'm frustrated, but in the end, it's still I think on the scale of judgment here, it's a win for Ashland. So that's my piece on this. And for my vote, I would, in terms of this 4-inch caliper replacement that's in this drawing, like I would propose a white oak. I think that would be appropriate. And I think, in terms of the 4-inch versus the larger caliper, I learned something tonight in terms of things, Eddie. If you really and truly believe that that's the right answer and will result in a better, bigger tree in time, then I'm willing to, I was kind of, I always think larger caliper is better, but I'm willing to hear that expert advice on that. So that's my 2 cents on this. So, I guess next steps here, is there more to say, board, with regard to this presentation? Is there more to ask, or do we move forward towards kind of the discussion of whether or not to close the public hearing on this?
I think we can move towards that discussion.
I agree.
Deepa?
I do agree too.
Okay. So, I guess, Peter, so I just would like you to kind of say out loud, both for our own effect as well as for the public and those attending, if we move forward and take a vote to close this public hearing, what, this signals that we are not receiving or taking any other additional information at this time. We're not taking any further public comment, and the board will focus its energies on deliberating towards a decision and a vote on this matter, right?
Correct. And I would just preface it in this way, number one is once we close the public hearing, you are in deliberation, you won't be taking any public comment, and so if you were to open it up for one more comment, public comment before you close, we could do that. One other thing I will mention though is the other topics of discussion. At the last meeting, there was pretty much 5 items of discussion we were talking about. We went through a lot of topics at the last meeting, such as the parking, the lighting. Also, we have, if the board needs to request and/or if any more information from the applicant would like to put forward regarding the sign, the fence along the property line, which was discussed at the meeting, I would say this is the time to do it before we would actually get into discussion and/or close a public So I would ask, does any planning board members would like to hear any more additional information regarding any topics, such as, the fence along the property line, site plan, drainage, calcs, drainage, grading, sign, location of the sign, time of the sign, what time does it go on, what time should it be shut off, any items of any outstanding items that anybody would like to ask for more any additional information on.
Sure. I go ahead, Trisha. Did you have something? Somebody started talking. Okay. I have two items. One is on I think there was a comment from the superintendent requesting, I think it was the superintendent requesting that the sign be on, I believe, from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I wanted to give the applicant a chance to kind of link that to an educational purpose, since we're being asked to allow for that per Dover amendment. And then my second question was to get a comment on any blasting that may occur in that hill behind the school, so that we have a better understanding of the drainage and the water issue, and potential handling of that, since that hill right now appears to be somewhat vulnerable to water damage, if you will. So could we hear both of those items briefly?
So, Bill, would you like to ask if the superintendent is available, and/or if someone from your team would like to comment on the sign, the request to have it displayed starting at 5 p.m., and to be shut off at 10 p.m.?
I think that's what it was, if I recall.
Correct.
You can correct me.
The superintendent isn't here.
I am.
Oh,
Mike.
you are.
Yep.
There you are, Jim.
I'm
Sorry.
here.
I'm getting too much Brady Bunch Zoom
Now there's
stuff.
lots of people on
All
here.
right.
No worries.
Good. Glad you're here, Jim.
Yeah, no worries. So, Anna, to answer the question, I think from an educational component that you're asking about, the sign serves a lot of purposes, right? I mean, when we're dealing with significant weather concerns during the winter months, for instance, we make certain calls that may occur at 5 in the morning, and where families are on the road and ready to go to work, and then it's an opportunity for us to at least say, hey, we're in a 2-hour delay, or we're in a full cancellation for the day. It provides us that opportunity. And even going into the evening, if we make a decision the night before, for instance, how that impacts students and their ability and their families' ability to make sure that they have coverage in the morning, if it's a delay or if it's a snow cancellation. That being said, we also have opportunities within our community. We have numerous events at the high school and or other facilities for town meeting. It gives us an opportunity to inform the rest of the community what is happening in our town. So that being said, I mean, looking at the time period, that 10 p.m. to 5, the 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., I totally understand. When we look at even the lights at the high school, at the fields, there are concerns in the back neighborhoods, right? When those lights are on, trying to find a perfect time, is a challenge. And that was sort of the time frame that I thought was appropriate to be able to keep the community informed of events that are happening. Mike, I see your hands up. I don't know if you're looking to add into that.
Yeah, if I may, I'd love to be able to add to it from a little bit more of a curriculum instruction and assessment standpoint as well. As you know, one of the most important things that we do as a school system is communicate with our families. It's one of the things that we look for our teachers to do on a regular basis, and it's something that we're judged upon by the state in terms of our family and community engagement strategies. Being able to do this will allow us to present messages to families in a different way that will make sure that we are reaching a broader audience than what we can currently reach. Now, beyond that, I also think that there's some really creative things that we've done, particularly at Mendez, throughout the years. I think about the incredible work that has been done with our digital newspaper that was created by students and for students at Mendez. I see an opportunity for our students to begin making messages to the community about some of the wonderful work they're doing by putting, student representatives to help create messages on this board that are student written, student generated, presenting messages of kindness and our positive values and our core values to the town. So I think this is an awesome opportunity for kids to take ownership over some marketing of themselves in the school, and it's exciting. And these are the types of things that once you offer to someone, like a Lisa Lamphere, who's our librarian, or so many other teachers in that building, they're going to go with it and they're going to create something. And I'm excited to see what will end up happening because of this as an educational standpoint. So thanks for the time. I know that's a concern of some folks, and I think it's going to be tremendous.
Thank you, Michael.
And would you be open to something that's closer to a sunsetting type of time so that we do preserve a little bit of that scenic route feel?
But I mean, Anna, honestly, I mean, when we get into the winter months, right? I mean, it's the sun sets at what, 4:30, 5 o'clock at times. So how are we going to get that message out? So, I mean, I'm thinking those are like from a community standpoint, getting a message out when we get into those winter months. I mean, we have very little daylight. So if you're talking sunset, sunrise, quite often our children are getting to the buses, right? In the dark already. So I just find that to be
I'm trying to find a balance, Jen, between the scenic route.
Understood.
And your request.
So Anna, I think we were having a discussion about closing the public hearing, and we were kind of saying, look, what additional information do we want to ask at this time? And again, like, let's, we don't have to close the public hearing, and then it enables us to continue to ask questions. We can take a limited, period of time for public comment, and then just continue, and then we can continue to ask. So I don't think it's a mutually exclusive decision, Peter, unless you disagree. Sorry, Jim,
No, yeah, Joe, the only thing, Anna, I would focus on is our building hours. I think typically at the Mendez School, we start pretty early. 10 o'clock is when our buildings close at night. And then in terms of when our custodial staff leaves, our students and our staff are getting there well before 7. But that 5 a.m., our buses are on the road by 6:15. So we're working within that time frame, if you will. But I just want to point that out too. It's not like I'm looking to be outside of tremendous business hours, if you will. So,
Jim, excuse me, I just want to ask one question. What time does the first bus pull into the Mendez School? Just for
Claudia would know best right now. I mean, it's with COVID, it's changed a little bit. Claudia, you're on. Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Claudia. So Peter, give her permission. Thank you.
There we go. Sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that. The first bus pulls in anywhere between 7:15 and 7:25. Prior to COVID, it was more around the 7:15. We've tightened that schedule up a little bit, extending the time between the school start times.
But staff is there earlier.
Oh, yeah, staff arrives anywhere from 6:30 on,
Right.
Sometimes even a little before if I can get the building open for them. And it is very dark, a lot of the year when we're coming to school.
And on the other end of the day, Jim, like, I was less phased by the 5 a.m., but the 10 p.m. kind of surprised me a little bit. Like, if you do programs in the building, if you're doing things after school, like, again, I don't know what goes on, but like, when is it wrapped up? I understand doors are closed at 10, but like, I just don't imagine in 3rd to 5th grade, you've got a lot of kids or activities after.
No, Joe, it's a good point, right? I mean, we're renting the facilities out. to youth basketball, to other organizations as well. So it's not just the
Sure.
school activities. This is a community facility. So.
Okay. Got it. Okay. That's good color. Thank you. Okay. So we got some information on the sign and the hours there, which was good. I guess to the board, with regard to closing the public hearing, like what are the thoughts here?
Joe, I think I also had a question about the blasting and the impact on the water.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't, apologies.
It's
Anna.
okay.
I didn't
No,
mean
no,
to,
it's okay.
trample
No
that.
worries.
So, who would be best to answer the question on the blasting?
I think I can start off, and then Phil from Shawmut or Mike can kind of chime in. In terms of the blasting, we may have to do some blasting in the back of the hill. In terms of the and Phil can kind of describe what that would be or what that would be. But in terms of the water, this did come up on our CONSCOM meeting as well. And just so everyone understands that, once the site is under construction, it is completely fenced in. There are erosion control measures put in place that will be part of the Conservation Commission's order of conditions. So any water that is being encountered during construction will be managed within that site with some additional possible frac tanks or some temporary retention basins that the contractor would construct as they are constructing the site. And I don't know, Phil, if you have anything you want to kind of add to that.
Hey, Bill,
feel
Ryan
free.
Lynch here with Shawmut. Good evening, everybody. No, I think you nailed it. If there is any blasting that is required, it is obviously highly regulated by CMR 527 1.00 by the Division of Fire Safety through the state of Massachusetts. There also is a blasting permit required from the town of Ashland Fire Department. So we would work very closely with those agencies. Those control things like the zone, the blast zone, safety requirements, permitting for use and handling of the materials, blast design plans, pre-blast inspection surveys. So it's a highly regulated process. Shawmut is very familiar with doing this. Obviously, safety is everybody on this call tonight is all of our number one concerns, and we share in that. And if there is blasting required, which based on the soil pre-characterization test pits that were done this summer, it appears there may be some. The total limits of that will be determined through the bidding of the work for the site work to nail down the exact amount. And then, as I stated, Chapter 527 CMR 1.00 will be followed throughout the process.
I just have a quick,
Thank you, Bill. Go ahead, Peter.
I just have a follow-up question. I know at the last project we had to deal with blasting, it was near a school, which would be the public safety building. I assume that blasting would be scheduled at times when, or to minimize the impact of the educational opportunities and/or the school day for the children. Would that be correct?
Of course, it will be highly coordinated with Claudia and Jim and the staff.
Thank you so much.
Anna, does that
I think that
answer the bulk,
for
or?
now that answers the question. I assume the applicant is discussing the potential impact of the blasting relative to the water collection issue or the potential for water drainage issues to arise, right? So I'm assuming that's an ongoing discussion that has not yet resolved. Or has that been resolved with a CONCOM?
CONSCOM has not been closed out completely yet either.
Okay.
So they are working, and I believe the peer review comments, things like that should be wrapped up, I believe, by early next week. And Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're still with us.
Yep, that's correct, Mike.
And I can just chime in that, Jared and Brittany from Niche Engineering are working tirelessly to get the plan amended, I would say, upon our peer review comments. Our peer review GCG, who I speak of I think at every meeting, they've been working for the town for 25 plus years now. So our peer review consultant has been, they are working with Jared to kind of get the plan to a point where all items of concern are taken care of, I would say. And please know that peer review, I believe, is also being used as for the Conservation Commission as well. I typically would share that with our conservation agent.
I don't have further questions.
Okay. One follow-up I have is on the set of plans that we have dated August 9th. I think those are the most current that are available. I would like, in the final plans that we have, I'd like the location of the sign as discussed in the last meeting to be placed onto the plans, so that's kind of it's part of our decision based on where it sits in the final plans that we approve. So if that's a request for new info, then so be it. But I think I'd like to see that.
It's not a problem.
Okay.
We'll pick that up.
Okay. So I guess back to the board, we've asked for a few other data points. We've gotten a little bit more information. How does the board feel at this point about closing the public hearing? Are we in favor? And again, Peter, I'd ask you to kind of weigh in here as well. Like, let's let the board kind of say where they're at. But in the event that we do not close the public hearing, we could take public comment, and we would be in a position to continue to request information as we work through our conditions to the extent there's additional information needed, correct?
Correct. So typically, I think most of the time, and I can just say from history, the board typically does not close the public hearing until, typically the board does sometimes close it, and then I work on a decision. I put together a decision, I distribute it to the board members. I know there's some work to do on the findings and the sections. I was able to kind of reorganize the conditions moving, from the previous projects, and I kind of added in all the plans and documents as needed. But I do know, obviously, the findings need some work, and any of the special conditions surrounding the items that were been brought up the last previous meetings will need to be kind of further fleshed out. So that's where I am right now in the planning office. There is a draft decision, and it needs, obviously a little bit more work. If we do close the public hearing, yes, we can take input and we can deliberate, and we can also ask for a commentary from our town council, but we would not be able to take any more information from the applicant at this point, and or any more public comment, I would say.
All right. With that context, how does I think each of us should kind of weigh in here? How do we feel? Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Joe and Peter, I was curious, are we waiting for any other input from any other committees in town, or do we have them all reviewed and have their blessings at this point? Are we waiting for Historic Commission to come back? Have they done their review, peer review? Have they?
I mean, Deepa, with regard to the Historical Commission, this has been an ongoing project in this town since 2017. The Historical Commission has existed during that time, and some of that time it was not in a seated board, but we're 4 years in on this project. This was not a last week thing that we're going to do this on this hillside. I mean, on from the perspective of waiting for a historic commission at this point, like I'm not of the mind that we at this point should wait. I think it's an unfair, hurdle for this project, in my opinion. But I that's with regard to historical, that's my view.
No,
So-
I wasn't particularly just thinking of historical commission, but just kind of sustainability of everyone and kind of who had a lot of say in the project. I was just curious if there are anything. I don't think that should affect our decision making, but I was just curious if the loop has been closed at all.
Sounds like it has not, to the extent that there was consensus at the last meeting that we would base our decision. It would be contingent upon the Conservation Committee's approval, right?
That's
that
correct.
that loop has not yet closed. That was the one item of consensus we had relative to other boards that I recall. I'll add my thought on this is that we have a member of the board who's not here. And that member of the board, we want to include in the decision making, right? At a future meeting. And that to me is a factor to leave the public comment open, because the questions we're going to ask may be different from what that member will want to know. And I would want this decision to be well-written and robust. It's an important decision and it has many complex components, and we would want that to get it right. And that weighs heavily for me if one member is not here. If I was not here, I would want this board to really weigh this out, and I'd want an opportunity to participate fully. The other thing I'll add is that we did get some new information. Some of it came in quite late. The tree report was received within the last, I believe, day or two. I believe only today, I think I checked with Peter and learned the town council would not be opining on the statute that the two statutes that were raised at the last meeting. So that's all new information to me and to this board. And so I think there's enough new information and there's a missing member that I believe requires us to keep the public comment open.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. So with that sentiment from Anna, Tricia and Deepa, where do you come in?
Well, I think it might be appropriate to keep things open so that we can ask whatever questions that may come up. I think it might be appropriate to set, as you suggested at the beginning, a certain short period of time for public comment in a very controlled and equal way. And then to close, I don't know the official term, but to not then take any more public comment as we did last time for the remainder of the meeting, so that we can get to the, again, more specific consensus about the things that we have already discussed, to get more detail to Peter so that he can draft in a detailed fashion the conditions, which then we can have in front of us to discuss with the full board with Lakshmi. So in order to make some real progress tonight toward the goal line, to where we need to be. So I think those public comments can be, we've heard a lot of public comments up till now. We've received a lot of letters, which I'm sure it took a while to read, to go through. But a short period for comments and then closing that, wrong word, so that we can discuss amongst ourselves the detail to get, again, to review our consensus points, get to detail, so that we can get this in writing for next time, so that we can review it and be ready to move forward.
I don't know if I agree with that. I'm concerned that as we deliberate towards a decision that's complex and has many parts, we may need the applicant to comment on things, which requires some public comment.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like I think Tricia used the term closing, but I don't think she meant it in the context of closing the public hearing. She's just saying, we'll take public comment, we'll put a firm time limit, we'll listen to it, we'll stop, we will deliberate, and we will not close the public hearing tonight and it will continue as an
Correct.
open public hearing
Exactly.
until
I
our
want to
next
make
meeting.
sure that we can give the applicant an opportunity to educate us through points of contention as we deliberate a very complex decision, in my opinion. Because we may want to add conditions and we may want clarification points, whether it's from the superintendent or from, you know, Eddie or whoever has an expertise in a particular area of a condition. So as long as we can do that, I'm with what has been expressed.
And Ian, that's what we're talking about, keeping the public hearing open, just, you know, saying, you know, but having however long for public comment.
Sounds good.
So Deepa, do you have any vastly different feelings here?
I'm good with this.
Okay. I'm fine with the proposed approach. So with that said, we will do some public, a public commentary period here. We're going to keep this to 25 minutes maximum. So we would ask that people, again, try to keep their comments concise, try to keep their comments on the topic at hand with regard to the proposal and the project as before us. And we would ask, given our approach here, that kind of one trip to the podium would be our ask here at this meeting. So with that said, Peter, if you could, let's.
Do we want to give people a potential timeline that no more than 2 minutes?
So let's say 2 minutes. So we'll keep a rough track and try to keep it to 2 minutes a person.
All right, I have a timer, so I'm ready to go. But
could I just add that I can speak for myself. I reviewed a lot of public comments, and I just want to convey to those who are here to speak that I'm confident the board has reviewed, and I think it'd be helpful if people don't repeat things they've already submitted so that we can be really efficient and new voices can be heard.
all right, thank you. So with that, Mr. Mark Dasoni has had his hand up for a while. So Mark, kick it off, pal.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. While watching the
Mark.
rest of the Sox game, I was listening to back and forth here. So last on Mark Dasoni, 49 Hawthorne Road, Ashland, Mass. So 17221. The last meeting you had, you took over about 2-3 hours on the tree and the gravesite. I got so irked and all that Mr. Peter turned me off, turned my camera off. I was trying to show what time it was, 11 o'clock by the time I started going crazy. So I'm looking at this. It's being dominated by the board, and the developers there. They got to know that somebody's got their backs. But to have the citizens, I'll say myself, sit back and listen for 2-3 hours on just a tree when this is an educational school building for school and educational for the children. That there's history involved, but there's also the secondary district. High school doesn't have a tree. The Fruit Street doesn't have a tree. Pitaway doesn't have a tree, and now Mendez Court has a tree. It took that long to discuss. I got nothing that's going to cover the project mainly. It's just my opinion saying, don't dominate for so long that you drift the citizens like myself to say, okay, are you still talking about this? And I'm afraid that this was going to go about that. If I was thinking to myself, well, this is going to be another 11 o'clock meeting and it's going to keep going. So domination of the board with the developer is not great for the citizens, because those are going to be the ones who's going to vote for them, who's going to pay taxes on it.
So that's 2 minutes, Mark.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Thank you for your comments.
Second person with their hand up would be Mr. Steve Morgan.
Hey, good evening. Just quickly, I don't appreciate the restrictions on time. It reminds me of town meeting. Maybe you'll throw me out next. So regarding the specific content, I haven't seen any updated traffic study. It hasn't been posted. I haven't seen the peer review comments. It was discussed earlier in the week, haven't even been submitted. So I don't know why you're talking about closing a hearing when you don't even have the peer review comments. It seems out of place. It seems like you have a purpose that isn't to get to the correct answer. In regard to the tree, I sent photos to the board. The construction project has already damaged the cemetery. And, you know, it's interesting to hear that town council isn't going to look at your own conduct in regard to damaging the cemetery. But, you know, the historical commission has it on their agenda. And, you know, it isn't about how many years you've been talking. It's about whether or not people have designated the historical asset and how big it is. I asked specific question as to what the setback was between a cemetery and another use, such as a municipal school. I'd like that answer. I don't want to use up my 2 minutes getting the answer, but I'd like someone to tell me what the appropriate setback is once the size of the cemetery is determined. There's 7 souls there. It's obviously bigger than the fence, and there are rocks up in the construction that appear to be broken gravestones. You've got the photos. I'd share them, but I don't have time. So I'd like that answer. In regard to the wetlands, we're still showing isolated wetlands. The CONSCOM made it clear those are not isolated wetlands as the digging determined and so forth. So they're getting that fixed. I would hope your board gets your plans fixed also. I saw there was a tree being taken down on the CONCOM plans that we talked about last time that we weren't taken down. So I'd like to know who's taking trees down along my boundary again, according to the drawing that was shown on Monday. I haven't seen it tonight, but I don't want any trees taken down on my boundary. We had that discussion. You guys had it and I emailed. So that was in the last hearing, but it's still on the plans at CONSCOM. In regard to the Open Space Committee, they're also discussing this field in their September meeting. They weren't part of the process, whether it was a 4-year project or not. They were not included, have not weighed in on the use of that field. Finally, going through here, so the sign, we talked about the sign, you know, the educational purpose of the sign. You know, that school supports the whole town. The whole town doesn't drive down Concord Street. So this idea that somehow driving by the sign is informing the town, you know, is not a reasonable concept. You know, everybody doesn't drive down Concord Street. Some people do speed down Concord Street, but that sign is not there to tell people when the town meeting is. You know, it's supposed to have an educational purpose. I hope you'll put it back by the school where people that are at the school will see it, and I will hope you keep the lights off. I don't need lights coming in my window at 5 in the morning.
Okay.
I don't need them at 10 o'clock at night. There's a noise bylaw in the town. And, you know, if the noise bylaw says 7 o'clock in the morning, then we should keep the lights off until 7 o'clock in the morning.
Thank Mr. Morgan. Thank you. I'm sorry.
You cut me off. Okay, well, thank you. Hopefully I can get the answer to my question.
Thank you.
So next up with their hand is Selectwoman Brandy Kinsman.
Thank you, everybody. Brandy Kinsman, 6 Lucy French Way, and I'm a member of the Select Board, but tonight I'm here mainly as a member of the community and as an individual Select Board member. First of all, I wanted to thank the Planning Board for all the work that they've done. Up until this point, I did get a chance to watch the 4+ hour recording of your last meeting. And it was an incredibly thorough discussion. I think the public should be assured that the public has really weighed in on this and that you've taken all the comments and the questions and, you know, from the abutters, from the community, and are really looking at those issues very, very hard. But I did want to address and talk a little bit about a letter that I had signed, as well as a few members of the Select Board and the school committee as well, a letter of support that we had sent to the Planning Board. And, you know, first and foremost, I'm a parent of an Ashland Public School student, not too far removed from the Mendez School. So I have been a proponent of this project for years, ever since there was the discussion about a feasibility study. I personally have been very involved in this particular process, which has been a very public process. And that includes everything from the public forums to the crafting of a town meeting, where in the middle of a pandemic, we were able to get our residents of Ashland to be able to come out and support and vote for 2 major projects. But I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the intention of that letter. And the intention of that letter is really not only to support the project, but to support this whole entire process. And I know that in a public hearing process, it tends to bring out the negative voices of a small but vocal minority that are against a project. And the purpose of the letter was really to support not only the project, but the process as well, and all the work that has gone into making it, to taking it to where it is. And your role, which you have taken very seriously, is to take where we were in January after the town meeting and all the details that weren't available to the public at that point, and really make this a public process, which has been very effective. And so,
Brandy, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm cutting you off. I have to be fair to everybody. I apologize.
So I just thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Amanda Hayes.
Hi, and I just, Amanda Hayes, 21 Rose Bay Drive. This is my first time speaking at one of these, so correct me if I do anything wrong. But I wanted to thank the board and the hard work of everyone on this project. I am the mom of two future clockers, a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old, and my husband and I moved to town in 2019. And I just wanted to voice the fact that we felt that this project has been something that connected us to the community since sort of our first months in town. We obviously, as the parents of young kids, we will attend these schools. We attended one of the community forums early on, and we were so impressed with the engagement of the community and the plans of the developers, and felt like there was really an opportunity to weigh in and to be educated early on. And we wanted to express our support for this project, and understanding sort of all of the difficult decisions that go in from all of these committees and boards in town, but did just want to make sure that that the board knows that there are parents in town that are, so hopeful that their kids will attend, a even better and brighter Mendez school. And that's, I don't want to take any more of your time. I just wanted to thank you and express our support for the project. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
The next hand, which just came up, is Claudia Bennett. Claudia, can you please step forward and give us your address, please?
Good evening. My name is Claudia Bennett. I live at 9 Sandstone Way. I do wear multiple hats here. I am a member of the school building committee, and I'm also the proud principal of the Mendez School. As old as it may be, I am the proud principal there. But tonight I do speak to you as a citizen of our community. And I do want to thank all of the planning board members for the time and energy that you volunteer for, our entire community in what I would say is sometimes less than a glamorous position. So I do thank you for your time and your thoroughness. I thank you. I also want to thank the members of the school building committee. They are town citizens. They are town employees. They are members of multiple boards and towns, including the select board, the finance committee, and the school committee. And I thank all of them and also all of our consultants who have been hired to work on behalf of our community. The citizens and employees who volunteer their time like you in Ashland make it a great place to live, have a family and beyond. And I know that everyone has worked through this process for over 3 years to bring our community a new school, well-deserved and so very much needed. And this school will service for over 40 years. I'm sorry, over 50 years, maybe even 100 years. And this school that was mostly I think it was overwhelmingly supported, 88% almost, 87.5, I think, at the polls. I've never seen anything like that in this community be passed at that number. So I just ask that you respect everybody's work here too. That again, they may be known as the applicants, everybody, in this process, but they are not developers who have their own profit that they're working for. They are, again, town citizens, town employees, and consultants who are working on behalf of our town, just like all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. Okay. It is about 8:43, so it's about 23 minutes, about 18 minutes. So if there are any new speakers who would like to speak at this time, this will be a final call. A couple.
Like we have two more, excuse me, Joe, we have two more hands. Number one is Lori Tusty.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Lori Tosti. I am the chair of the school committee, and I am also a longtime resident of Ashland, 30 years. And I also helped draft the letter that Brandy referred to earlier, and I agree with every word that she said, so I'm not going to take my time and repeat that. We appreciate the work of your board and anybody else weighing in here. And really, the part that I want to emphasize is just how solid this process has been from the building committee. And I was there from the beginning asking Mr. Adams to put together the application to the MSBA, which in and of itself is an enormous undertaking. And it's a huge privilege to be accepted into this program. And I attended many of the forums, many of the meetings. The timeline was always emphasized at every single thing that I attended. Every single meeting was very well run, very well advertised, multiple opportunities for anybody and everybody from any committee in town to come and participate. We talked about it at school committee meetings multiple times. I know the select board had talked about it. So I just really wanted to assure your board as well as the community what an incredibly thorough process this has been. This is my fourth term on school committee. As I said, I've lived in this town for decades, and I honestly really have never seen any committee run this efficiently with such attention to detail, giving so much opportunity to weigh in the community. And I think the community noticed that when they overwhelmingly supported the project. So it really is true that last minute changes can be very impactful to the financial aspect of the project. We asked the community to vote on something that we presented, and changes at this time do impact the project. So I just respectfully ask you to take that into consideration when making your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. The next person with their hand up was Rob Shear.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just had a quick question, then I think a statement. When the arborist came to look at the tree, I haven't read the report. And I understand that you're going to plan to grade up to the retaining wall in front of the tree in the tombstone. Did the subject come up if you remove that concrete wall and regraded the area that the tree's roots could possibly grow in that direction? Was that discussed at all, or is that possible? Because part of the reason that you're saying the tree must come down is because the roots are constrained. Was that looked at all or considered?
No, we didn't have that conversation, largely because we don't want to disturb the grave, and that would disturb, by taking that down, we could potentially disturb the grave site.
Actually, Mike, he did talk about the wall, and that the wall was, for the
I
trees
missed that.
perspective,
Yeah.
from the trees perspective, is actually a very positive thing. And he would, if we were trying to save it in any way, shape, or form, he would not recommend touching the wall. So, so that was the arborist comment about the wall. That the wall, once the damage was done, then acts you wouldn't want to disturb that from his perspective.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And the only thing I wanted to add is, of course, we did have a great, it was really a very good and thorough process. I participated in a lot of those meetings. I'm sorry, I didn't get my, I'm at 41 Bay Colony Drive, a member of the select board, speaking for myself. We did have a very good process, a very thorough process, and I'm glad to hear that people are casting things in a positive light here, because there was, I think it's fortunate that we finished this process on a positive note. I do want to say that we should also do a lessons learned, because, I think it's obvious to people involved in the process that that tree was missed, and the potential significance of that tree was missed during this process. And I'm one of those people that missed it. I wasn't aware of it till I went out and looked at it. I attended a lot of meetings. If I had been aware of it, I would have asked about it. So that's unfortunate. So I think, one of the things, although it has been a great process and a lot of, we're going to have a very positive outcome. This part of it was, as Joe alluded to, disheartening and unfortunate. And I hope that people will be reviewing what happened here, at least with an eye to preventing this kind of thing in the future. I'm not getting that sense, unfortunately, but I think it would be, positive if people were to think about that a little bit. And, how did we get to this point? I heard someone say that we could have easily redesigned the building if we had known. Well, we missed something here in this process. So, but no one's perfect, but I hope we have a little bit of reflection and lessons learned on this. So thank you, and looking forward to great school.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay. So I think this will be our last speaker for the time designated, Peter.
The next speaker will be Mr. Michael Herbert.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Herbert, Town Manager, also a member of the School Building Committee. First, I just want to express my appreciation to the team on the Mendez School, working on the Mendez School. There's been a lot of hard work that's gone into this over several years. It's been a labor of love for some of our volunteers. It's been a lot of labor for some of our consultants. I also want to express my appreciation to the Planning Board. I do think that this has been a very important process leading up to the Planning Board and including the Planning Board process. I know we talk a lot about things in terms of things, what could have been missed. And then we also talk about the fact that this was a very public process with a lot of support. That doesn't necessarily mean that changes can't happen during this process. And it's been encouraging to see some of the dialogue and the back and forth between our team members and the Planning Board. But I do just want to reiterate some of the things that have been stated earlier. Some larger changes do carry consequences with them. And just like with any project, you're weighing the pros and cons of that. So I don't envy any of you sitting in those seats. I know it's difficult, but again, I just want to express my appreciation to you and the team, and also the public for creating such a nice and thorough and hopefully successful process. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, I think that's it.
All right, so the Planning Board, I think for this portion, I think we need, there were some draft decisions that were circulated by Peter earlier this week. I think the area where we've got the most discussion and consensus building here is in and around some specific conditions that would be associated with the site plan review as well as the special permit decision. So I think it might be useful to focus the energy around those, build consensus on what those conditions may be, and then work towards getting into specifics about phrasing and then creating how those conditions may be worded. Is this an approach that's amicable to the members who are here this evening?
I think so, Joe. I was going to suggest a slight reverse, which is start with the easy stuff, but just to have some momentum and build some positive kind of consensus. But I'll leave that to you, and I'll go either way. We can go complex first.
So you're kind of just saying, like, for the existing shell documents, like, do a quick pass through those and do the quick hits with odds and ends that we want to change.
I would suggest some quick hits on the stuff that we already know we have some consensus on, and then maybe have a larger discussion of where we may not have consensus on, and kind of air that out and see where we can get from there.
Deepa and Tricia, are you okay with this approach?
We're talking specifically about the conditions. Is that right?
So, for example, on the sign, I think there's consensus on the board. I think I was the one voice against, and I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'm happy to help the board draft a consensus opinion on the digital sign, despite my prior statement about the Dover Amendment previously. So that would be an example where we have consensus, and that's an easy one to work on.
Yeah, so again, that's a specific condition that we're talking about putting, so that's fine. Let's jump in on the sign. So be it. Let's do that.
And I think Peter had a starter text there that we can use as a beginning basis point.
Yeah.
I think I said some bullet point topics to kind of think about, obviously.
So it was last in the bullet list, but the first one I think would be placement, right? So again, the existing plans that we have, I believe dated 8/9, they show the existing sign on, I believe it's 4.0, C 4.0. Let me just check that. And so again, my ask earlier was, can we just get the sign on the plans as identified, and then that makes it easier for us to not have to try to describe the positioning of that sign in language terms in the condition. Is that
Joe? Unless Anna has the same thing in front of her, which she may have. I already have some draft text that I just was kind of fiddling around with.
Okay.
If you want, I can read it, and people can obviously make changes, suggestions, let me know where it's gone wrong, but just as a starting point, unless Anna has the same thing.
Go for it. I think just go ahead and read it. I don't have it right in front of me, so please do read it.
So mine was digital sign. Pursuant to the Dover Amendment, the planning board approves the construction and use of a digital sign in the location and of the maximum size shown in the presentation and or drawings dated, and that is to be determined, because we need those drawings. The final design.
Or you're referring to the August 12th drawings? Those were the last drawings we saw.
Well, you had just mentioned requesting the applicant to provide drawings with it in its location, which I think they did, but whatever drawings we want to refer to.
I'm saying on the actual plans, right? The large deck of actual site plan review documents, right? It was C 4.0, right?
Okay.
Again, I'm just referring to it there. I'm saying on those plans, like I'm not looking for the specifics of the sign, just this is the location of here's the sign on the plans.
Right. There was a sign location, and then we were also shown drawings of an elevation that showed an approximate size.
Right.
So
on
I
the
was going to
12th,
refer to that as well, assuming that that drawing was making its way into the set.
Yes.
Okay, so we'd have something specific to refer
Yeah,
to.
and just a note, if those elevations can be submitted into a rendering, I will add those to the document of records.
So
That's
I go ahead. Sorry, Tricia.
That was a note to Bill, I assume, Peter?
Yes.
Okay. And then I do continue with that if anyone.
Go ahead, keep reading.
Okay, I continue. The final design shall include a landscape plan with vegetation around the sign, which I think is something Deepa or Lakshmi brought up last time.
Deepa did, yes.
And then I said, note the following conditions. The appearance of movement and or scrolling is not permitted. Intermittent flashing or text is not permitted. The text will be of a single color. The text will be off between the hours of blank and blank because we hadn't discussed that yet. And that's what I have. That was my kind of my draft text.
And I think that's a great start. My only suggested changes are, so the Dover Amendment, there's a little bit of an analysis that we need to kind of protect ourselves and cover, right? So that it serves an educational purpose, that the alternatives are not sufficient, that we've weighed various experts in public comment, and there's an analysis that takes place. And I sent Peter my thoughts on that. I think the applicant answered a question on the Dover Amendment and the analysis in the Forster case. And I think we just need to flush out the section where Tricia says pursuant to the Dover Amendment, and we just need to add a couple of sentences that we're finding there's an educational purpose, et cetera, because otherwise it doesn't meet the Dover Amendment. We need to make that analysis, I think, very, very clear.
I think if that's something you can flush out to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Peter, I sent you like, hey, take this language of the applicant and just kind of morph it. And you said, no problem. And do you want me to try to draft it right now on the spot?
You're more than welcome to. I can do it when I'm back in the office. But you can talk through it right now and everyone can hear it.
Is it important that we refer to the Dover Amendment in this? Is that a necessity? Does the planning board just have jurisdiction to allow the sign in this area?
I
think it's important that we talk about it, Trish.
Okay. That's just a question.
Yeah, that particular case, which I attached to I think that it was sent to the board. The case talks about how it's helpful to be clear that we did our analysis, because if there is a challenge, then that needs to be clear, right? So I think we've covered the factors. We've asked the applicant what the educational purpose is. So the way I would envision it is the board finds that pursuant to the Dover Amendment, or let me step back a little bit. In light of the educational purposes presented by the applicant, the board finds that the alternatives are not sufficient due to the intended use of the sign for various educational and community purposes. Something like that. I think we just need to include that analysis in there.
That sounds good. That sounds good to me. Well, what about the hours that were mentioned?
So on the hours, I mean, I respect the 5 a.m. piece. I understand that people are up early, kids going to school, and I can see kind of a safety argument being made that there needs to be kind of a visual, potentially a visual marker, if you will, of some kind. I'm not convinced on the 10 p.m. I do believe there's a better balance relative to this relatively quiet street at 10 p.m., which is a scenic street and the neighbors. And I'm not as comfortable with the 10 p.m. I want to protect as much of that kind of quiet evening, darker environment as we can. And I think that's a better balance. That's my 2 cents. So I would be comfortable with like 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. The 10 p.m.
I kind of have similar sentiments. Like I'm fine with the 5 a.m. It's more on the back end at some level. Yeah.
And to kind of add to that, the Dover Amendment is really about educational purpose. And I know we are looking at the school as a community center also. But we tend to not, we don't have elections at 10 p.m. We don't have farmers markets at 10 p.m. So the things that we've brainstormed as potential use of the space don't really happen at 10 p.m. on that particular street. So I would be more comfortable with 8.
I don't have a problem with 8. I think there could be activities obviously that happen after 8. I think it could have some uses after 8, but I think this is a good place to compromise on things and to weigh the character of the street with the most, maintaining the most important messaging of the digital sign without needing to have it go too far.
I think that's reasonable. So sounds like we wrote it.
Yeah. Deepa, how do you feel about this?
I absolutely agree with the 3 of you. I think it's a good balance between trying to be mindful of the scenic road as well as the school necessities.
Okay. Okay, so all right, so I think on the sign, are we generally good here?
Peter, do you feel like you have what you need?
I do.
Okay. I think we're good. Do we want to do the fence next?
Sure.
Sounds good. I'm gonna get, here's the easy one. I mean, I thought that that clause was good as written in draft by Peter, and I did not have any.
I would second that.
And why don't we, maybe we should just read it so that it's, so that somebody can follow along, right? So I'll read it quickly. So fence. So again, this would be a condition with regard to the fence to shield the butters along the drive in the car loop, not the bus loop. The applicant assumes the obligation of erecting and maintaining a fence from the northwesterly corner of 126 Concord Street, running easterly along the property line, ending at the intersection of Fisk Road. The fence shall be made of a material and a height agreed upon by the applicant and the planning board.
So just to add a little bit more detail, which we can, if I can just jump in, is that the proposal by the applicant was to implement a 6-foot white, I believe it's a white cedar or a cedar fence that would be solid in material. And so that would be the proposal, and that's what was kind of talked about at the last meeting. From the northwest corner, and really that is taken from that language is taken from the deed which the town obtained the property in 1953, which states that obligation. The one item that we may, or I don't know if the board wants to discuss, is a fence that would be running from that corner of 126 Concord Street down the entrance. I'll call it the entrance handle. I believe the applicant was proposing a 4-foot fence, but this would be the time to discuss that and ask any questions to the applicant regarding that property boundary.
On that one, the conversation for that segment, so again, running from that corner down along the entrance driveway to Concord Street, like I think the applicant was looking to talk to the homeowner there on at that address whose property abuts the town property, and get a sense of what they wanted and having input from that abutter. Right? Is that?
Yeah, Joe. We put a 4-foot fence there just because we don't think it would be. We think it would be unneighborly to have a 6-foot stockade fence to basically create a wall there for them.
Walls them off. Yep. So yeah, I mean, I defer to the abutter and what their wishes would be there, right?
Yeah, because right now it's a chain link fence, so we don't want to change their experience on their street to that extent, right? So.
Paul, this is Peter, town planner. Has a conversation been held, and has anybody from the application team reached out to that property owner at 26 Concord Street?
We haven't targeted them with the communication about this. So if you want to put in the conditions that it'll be per what we've have on the design, or what they would agree to, however you want to word that, that's fine. Obviously that's the end state is a few years down the line. We will obviously be reaching out to them again on this, and they might change their mind between now and then as well. So if there's a way to have some flexibility to do what's gonna make them happy, we'd appreciate that.
Okay.
So I think to accommodate for that, right, the fence shall be made of a material and a height agreed upon by the applicant and the planning board. Maybe comma, or as agreed to by individual abutters along this span of Concord Street.
I have a suggestion, Joe. I had put and the height agreed upon by the applicant and the planning board and shown in the construction document submitted for permitting. I'm not sure. I assume that's happening, but I'm not sure. And then I added a sentence: any alteration in the height and or extent of the fence shall be by mutual agreement between the applicant and the adjacent property owners.
Sounds better than my proposal.
Okay.
Do we want to put language in there that the planning board does not need to approve that agreement to speed that up? Right? We don't necessarily want that to come back to us, right? We're comfortable.
Certainly not.
Absolutely not. Yep.
We want to just kind of make that crystal clear so that the applicant and the abutters can reach those agreements without any need to come to us for approval, right? We're not approving that. We're just saying, go and do it, right?
Figure it out yourselves is basically what we're
Right.
saying. Yeah.
Peter, did you recommend that we kind of clarify that there's no need for additional approvals of such agreements?
I agree. I think personally, from my standpoint, I think we're talking about two different property lines. I think the property line in the rear running from 120, the corner of 126, running to the section of Fisk Road. I think because it's within the deed, I think it makes sense to minimize the flexibility and make it as straightforward as possible. Regarding the property line running abutting the entrance handle, I think that's the property line where we should have some flexibility. That's my point. That's my view.
So if I may, Peter, just one thing around that. The fence chosen in the wooded area as opposed to the buffer between the open space on a lot, it may not make a lot of sense to have, and they may not want a cedar fence along in a wooded area, right? That might make more sense to be a chain link. So there might be a reason to be flexible there, and Eddie might be able to chime in. I don't know how well a cedar fence holds up in an enclosed space like that either. So I think for a buffer, we want to have that stockade fence, but I don't know about through a wooded area.
Yeah, I think the flexibility would be important. The other thing that's important is to think about topography. Certainly when you get to chain link, it allows you to kind of run up or down a slope a lot easier than kind of stepping a white cedar fence. So I think that flexibility in terms of how we kind of apply those different fence types would be important.
So just to be clear from my perspective, I as I look at the span of abutters along the line that we're referring to, there's 1, 2, 3, there are 4 abutters between that northwest, the corner we're referring to, and Fisk Road. So I'm just trying to be totally crystal clear, like where I'm trying to get to is, if people want a fence there, that we're providing a fence there. If one of the abutters feels that they don't want a fence, then we're not gonna put a fence if they don't want a fence. So I think we're putting this fence because of a term in an old deed from 1953, and we're also doing it to try to provide some shielding to the abutters. So like I think we're trying to do the best we can for the abutters and make people happy, right? So I think that's the balance we're trying to strike.
I think that's a really important distinction, and we should be clear about that, that we would provide this fence assuming all abutters agree. That should be crystal clear, right? So that there's no confusion.
But are you saying, Anna, that all of the abutters have to agree to one height of fence, or if they either have to all want to fence or all not want to fence, or can say the abutter closer to Fisk, which I think is the more wooded area, I think, could they say, we really don't need a fence, we like the woods.
Right, I agree. So how
where
do
everyone else might want a fence, say.
Right.
Do we have an idea of what the abutters want? Like, do we actually know?
The one abutter we've heard from is Mr. Morgan, and he's been clear that he wants a fence to the rear of his property.
Have we heard
consistently referred to that? I don't believe we've heard from the other three abutters in our meetings. I'm not aware, but Peter.
I don't believe so. There was one abutter at our last meeting, but I believe he's on the other side. But I can go back and look into the record, and if so needed, reach out to him. So I think
in 2 weeks to our next meeting, maybe we could just get some answers to this and clarify.
In the ideal world, it'd be good to say, let's just put it there and not right, and everybody's on the same page. So let's clear that up.
Again, though, I don't think we can. I'm not sure we need to do that, because again, you can ask the abutters now, and then a year from now, as the construction is happening, or 2 years from now, when there's a new school there, they could change their mind about something. So I think having it be flexible, like, we'll put up this kind of fence, unless by mutual agreement, then don't put up a fence. But it's kind of then we're giving an option that according to the deed, we are filling our obligation, we're putting up a fence. But hey, if you don't want it, by mutual agreement, you cannot have a fence.
I think you got it, Tricia.
But I think it's hard taking a survey now. I think it kind of forces them into something that maybe a different homeowner will be there 2 years from now.
Yeah, now that's
would
fair.
we then, so if this, are we gonna kind of like, if people want this fence, we're gonna put it there and then we're gonna remove it later? If we leave the language very flexible, let's just be sure we understand that a later homeowner may say, take it away, right?
I don't think the fence is going up for 2 years.
Okay.
So is that right? I don't know who is
the applicant.
Correct. It won't be the first thing that goes up. It'll be a later stage thing. So yeah, I mean, I think it personally, I like the flexibility piece, both of the type and characteristics of the fence, right? To Eddie's point, it gets to be steep over there, and trying to get the same fence at that location as part of as a flat location may not be practical. It may not be what they want, right? They may enjoy looking out their back and seeing all woods as opposed to a wall, right? So having that flexibility to do what the abutters want, I think is what we're going to want to do.
Okay. I think I've heard enough. I think with everything that was said, and Trish, if you want to send me over just that language and Anna as well, I can blend it together to put something together.
Okay. I'll send this over later, and you can use some or none of it, whatever you want.
I think we got it. It doesn't sound like we got it, but I think we did.
I think we got it.
I think flexibility, right? I think we want flexibility. There's consensus there, and we want to give the homeowners some say. So maybe the way to phrase it is, we're going to honor the wishes of individual abutters and offer them a fence if they so wish, right? And that's that.
Perfect.
So I think the remaining easy stuff is the aspirational, hopeful wishes on the solar panels. Super easy language that just says the planning board encourages and supports the eventual placement of solar panels on top of that school. And I would suggest we add, there's no need to come to us for permission, just do it type of language, right? We're in support of it.
Can you read your proposed language on that?
There is none. No one, we've never drafted it.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had taken a stab between
No,
that's
I'm
fine.
just making it up as I go along right now. So basically the planning board is supportive of the applicant's aspiration to place solar panels on top of the school. And there's no need for additional permitting when there's no need for additional permitting when the applicant is able to secure. What are we securing?
Funding.
Financing. Yeah, funding.
Exactly. In other words, we don't want to force the applicant to come back for a permit on that, right? We're just saying we support it, and we want to be able to be efficient on that.
That language, we've done that language previously during Preston's time on the board, Peter. We definitely have put in kind of those favorable clauses that allow for these additions without further permitting. Probably not at this scale. So there might be precedent language out there to look at.
Are we comfortable with that? Because we have not discussed that at the last meeting. We discussed aspirational goals of this. We did not discuss my added thought that let's make it easy for the applicant. Let's motivate the applicant to make this happen by not having to see us again on this issue.
I mean, this is a pretty large, this will be, a meaningful array of solar, right? Certainly not the scale, some of the stuff we see in farm fields, but it will be meaningful, right? What could go wrong where waiving the permitting of this would be an issue?
The abutters may change their minds and have a different view. Right now, they did not show up to say they don't like the idea of solar. My position is that it's in the renderings. I think the public was aware that this could come, and the building has been presented publicly as being ready for it. So I think it's been publicly aired out as something that's aspirationally important. So I'm comfortable with the risk that later on somebody may complain. I think it's been aired out publicly sufficiently, in my opinion. If the board disagrees and there's no consensus on it, we can remove that.
Yeah, but I mean, what if there's as presented to us in these drawings, right? They're low visibility, there's low impact visually anywhere. What if somebody decides, well, again, let's get really aggressive and let's stack and do something crazy where we've got a much larger array that's far more visible. We do, again, I'm not saying anybody do that. I'm just, you've got to imagine the possibilities 7 years from now, right? We've waived our ability to review that and understand that and discuss its implications on a scenic road, right? So I got Tricia.
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with you, Joe. I think that we don't really need the line. I think just the encouraging, as Anna originally suggested, of getting these solar panels should make future applicants say, hey, they're encouraging us to do this. It should be an easy win. But the technology is always changing. Typically it's getting better looking, not worse, right?
Yep.
But they can be flat, they can be up at an angle, they can be lifted up off the roof. If there's choices to be made, maybe the planning board at that time, hopefully us, because it's sooner rather than later, but maybe it should be taken a look at quickly.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, what basis do you have? You're looking at 7-year-old renderings from the 2019 meetings where it was presented. You don't have detailed plan schematics for this.
If we say, if this is proposed within the next 3 years, there's no need to come back? What if we limit the time frame? That way we're motivating the applicant to get this done.
I just don't think it's a hard thing to say solar panels. I don't think on top of a building where we're already encouraging them in our own conditions So I don't think I don't think it's a big process to take a look at them, I guess.
And if I may, sorry, unless it's during the project, it wouldn't be me representing that, but I don't, just my opinion, I don't think that there's a real need to try to eliminate any permitting processes. I think whatever is proposed should go through the normal process. I mean, I think we can all agree that everybody wants it, and so as long as it's a good proposal, it should be. I think it should be pretty quick, hopefully. So I mean, I wouldn't. Don't think that that the quote unquote applicant is looking for that. I don't see a big win there, and if you have any reservations about it, I would recommend not including anything that waives for further jurisdiction on stuff.
Sounds like we're leaving it as, it sounds to me like we have no consensus on that second sentence, so we're going to get rid of it. Just stick to aspirations.
Let's get deeper. Do you have any distinct feelings or opinions on this? And then
no, I agree with you and Trisha as well, that I don't think that's a big ask for folks to come back for a quick permitting check. It's not going to be something that as a board we may say no to it anyways, but I think we should still hold from the kind of the look and feel of how this building shapes up, adding those panels and design changes. So
Peter,
my thinking was that it could speed up funding. It could create a lot of kind of quick opportunity to jump on funding opportunities without much need to come back if we vetted it properly. But if there's no comfort here, there's no need to belabor it. We can move on.
Peter, what's the threshold where a solar array needs to come before us? It's over certain.
Believe I'm not. You know what? I'm not the. I haven't done too many solar arrays, especially when they come on top of the buildings per se. I know, and I also do know the building codes have been changing on this fairly rapidly. So it's very different from the solar array that was permitted by the planning board off of the Memorial Drive. I mean,
that was massive.
That was massive. That was 60. Yeah. I will say that I think it's better off. I think we can put this sentence, and I'm happy to work over the next 2 weeks and reach out to Anna to build out a paragraph within our findings and put it in a different location within our decision to take it away from the conditions and put it in just a different but to highlight the aspirational goals of the planning board and then kind of move it in that direction, I would say.
But just to be clear, I think the consensus is we don't want to waive future permitting.
Yeah, and that wouldn't waive
as applicable. We're not waiving future permitting.
Yeah, because if anything came up per se, which was similar to the high school solar in the parking lot, that's something that the planning board would probably want to take a look at.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
And so I think moving that direction would be a good move to the finding section.
So it sounds like we are just going to leave it as an aspirational support, and that's that. That's fine. So I think the last condition issue is the memorial site and the tree. Do we want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think we should. So I think that I have 3 bullets. So in terms of conditions around the removal of the existing white oak, I have 3 bullets that I'll lay out there as proposed pieces of the condition. And then if we can, we jump off from that. Does that work for the board?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
So my first bullet is all care and precaution should be taken to protect the tombstones during the removal of the oak tree located in the is it the Francis Poole Memorial Site? Is that the official name on the sign?
That is the official name on the sign.
Okay, so I'm going to refer to it as that. And if that's incorrect, I'm happy to have that updated, but that's how I'm going to refer to it here. So all care and precautions should be taken to protect the tombstones during the removal of the oak tree located in the Francis Poole Memorial Site. I'm going to go on to say that there's a document that's been brought to our attention. The removal should follow the 3rd edition Mass Preservation Guidelines for municipally owned historical burial grounds and cemeteries. So this is a document that's produced by the Mass Department of Conservation and Recreation, and it's a lengthy and sizable document which talks at great lengths about the preservation maintenance of historical burial grounds. And there is a section within that specifically talks about best practices when removal of a tree in a historical cemetery. And I think it would be a good baseline to ask to use in the removal of a tree.
I like what I'm hearing so far. I'm with that. Do you want to go to point 3, or Trish and Deepa, do you guys like those 2 points?
Yeah, I think I was reading the same document that was sent, and it seemed to have a lot of good information in there. So
okay,
you had a third though, Joe?
So I get two more short ones.
Okay.
The tree should be cut as low as possible without risking damage to the tombstones present in the site. So I'm just trying to get at, we don't want to leave this, I don't think we're intending to leave this tree sticking up 10 feet. We obviously want to cut it as low as possible, but I think to be very clear, there's, fragile old tombstones there, and we don't want to risk damaging them trying to cut it 2 inches from the ground. So
I think there's just one. I think there's just one, isn't there? I mean,
Yes.
but I'm aware of
many pictures, but sorry.
Yeah, within the fence, I think there's just one.
There's one headstone.
Headstone.
However, if you read through some documents, some historical, Ashland's historical, that there may be more bodies buried there.
There may be something at the surface level that we're not aware of, or that's thinly covered by ground cover, or
yeah.
I
mean, if you've got at the bottom, that diameter, that tree's massive, so you're going to need a serious saw to get through that. And that's an old tombstone. So my point is simply, like, the tree should be cut as low as possible without risking damage to the tombstones present. Right. I think that this Mass DCR document would probably speak to some of that specificity too. The last point is the stump of the tree shall not be ground under any circumstances.
Yep, and that's also included in that document. So it could, there could be, there may be other documents out there that are about this type of care as well. But this document does cover a lot of the circumstances that we're talking about here, including no grinding, including no weed whacking around old tombstones like this, because they can chip the stone, things like that. So there's a lot about care and maintenance in there as well. It's provided a lot of information. So I think it's a good thing to reference.
Just to be clear, go ahead, Peter.
No, it was Paul. So, sorry. If I may, would you consider another condition to what you said about the height of the stump? And it's related to, as we work with Stimson, and quite frankly, when the arborist was out, Bartlett said that the educational opportunities surrounding the tree is something they would love to work with us off contract on. So if they deem that we have an educational opportunity to have it, 2 feet up or something like that for an educational opportunity, I don't want it written in a way that would preclude us from being able to celebrate the tree in that way. So if you'd entertain something that would allow for that flexibility for an educational purpose. So you know what I mean. So it's not.
I'd love to see us try to do something educational with it. So I think.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure that was an option.
So to me, the educational piece belongs outside of the gravesite. I feel like removing that tree and using that wood outside, like the part that we remove can be used for educational purposes. I think the part inside that gravesite needs to be a gravesite, and it needs to honor the seriousness of what that site is. And education is extremely serious, but it's a gravesite. And I want to balance, me personally, I want to balance that by keeping that educational piece out of that gravesite. I think we need to honor the history of that gravesite above having kids in there learning about the tree. If they can learn about that tree outside of the gravesite should be a gravesite.
I'm sorry, and I completely agree with that. Whatever I'm talking about is that we're going to have a perimeter fence and no one's inside the perimeter fence. So I didn't mean to indicate that we would have anyone inside, but if it's close enough to the fence that there could be opportunity for someone to walk up to the fence and do it. I was more alluding to that. We would certainly not want anyone inside the fence.
And I think what I'm trying to say is, let's say that the stump is, creating some kind of biology, if you will, that we can look to and learn from. Obviously, that's a curriculum issue, and I can't, comment on that. But my preference is that asset, if you will, that's being removed, be utilized for benches, educational purposes. It's a town, it belongs to the town. That tree should be used to beautify our community, right? But that gravesite is a gravesite above all other things.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So then my second bullet, which said the tree should be cut as low as possible without risking damage to the tombstones. But I mean, it sounds like perhaps maybe that should not be stated, should not be part of the condition based on planning board commentary here. Like, how do you?
Which one?
So again, there's 3 bullets. The first one's all care and precautions should be taken to protect the tombstones during the removal of the oak tree located in the memorial site. Mass DCR guidelines on municipally owned cemeteries should be followed for the removal of the tree and maintenance of the site. The second bullet was the tree should be cut as low as possible without risking damage to the tombstones present in the site. So I think
that's consistent with respecting the tomb site. That sounds like consistent with viewing that as a grave site so far. Am I missing something?
Well, I think what the applicant was saying is that if you were to leave a larger piece of stump there, that there was potential inability to do educational stuff, leverage it for educational purposes while remaining outside the perimeter of the grave site. I think that was what was just said. I think you're saying you'd prefer that not to happen, and you'd prefer it to happen completely outside of the square. I guess, like, I want to stay in the sandbox of the conditions that we can do here. So, like, the point of what I was just,
I think the condition can be that to the extent that we are cutting it into a stump, we're honoring how did you phrase it? We're not risking the.
I mean, we're trying to avoid at all in great cost risking any damage to the tombstones present.
Correct. And maybe where I'm going with this is a deeper condition that the grave site remain honored as such, right? Because and I think we all get that. We're all doing it. And I don't know if we need to be blatant about it. But I'm comfortable with the conditions you have set out, Joe. I don't feel we need another one to honor that gravesite. I think the way you phrased it takes care of my concerns.
I wonder if this should become a little bit of a landscape design exercise in some way to kind of become part of the design as well, and give it a little more thought about how that could shape out to be, instead of talking about the height of how the tree is cut down, since we are talking about kind of creating that element right at the entry of the school as well. So maybe it's part of the design. So we celebrate the tree at the same time, respect that grave that's there, so that we find, and I wonder, we have experts on the kind of our design team. I'm sure they will have some fantastic suggestions that we could use from before defining the heights, whether it's in, wonder if it's way of grading the site, or is it something that is how the tree could be treated? Like the benches, for example, was one way of celebrating that element, but is there something else that we should look at for the grave itself?
So, I mean, I think it's an interesting idea. How does it translate into a condition, which is what we're trying to formulate here, right? So you've got to, I hear where you're going, Deepa, but you've got to turn that into a condition that we're going to put in a document that we're asking people to live by. So,
yeah, because for me, the other lingering thing in my head is like, are we really sure that there is just one versus multiples, and we don't know that extent exactly? I wonder if there are ways to find that out with all our recent technology. Can we do some surveys that could kind of make sure that before we cut down this tree itself, we realize what our extent of this site's going to be and how it's going to affect? Because agree that tomorrow when you start to put foundation in and you discover something, you'll have to come up with a game plan, right, at that point of time. So should we do that before we take that step of cutting that tree down and solving that now before going to that extent of saying, okay, just cut it down 4 inches, 5 inches above the ground?
So the way I hear, Deepa, your comment is, if we are protecting the spirit of the gravesite, let's figure out first what the gravesite is before we figure out how to make that tree design-wise honor the gravesite. And you know, I appreciate what you're saying. I think my gut feeling is that if we minimize, like, to me, a gravesite needs to have some honor, if you will, some kind of space, if you will. And we have, you know, there is already a fence there. I think the applicant has indicated if there is other findings of potential individuals, right, buried outside of that, certain guidelines will be followed. I don't think we need to make that a condition per se, or we could. I'm not sure it impacts my thought on kind of that particular tree. I think that tree is right next to a particular gravestone. So I'm okay with minimizing the damage to that tree and honoring how we cut it relative to that one known gravesite. I'm okay with that. I don't think we need to really know the entire area to link that tree to that grave. Historically, I think Aaron was buried under that tree. That's his tree, so to speak. And we need to kind of honor it that way, is what I'm trying to say in more direct language.
Can I clarify just one thing, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
One thing the arborist did say is that tree is not 230 years old. He can't say specifically that what the age is without some testing, but it's not original to sort of the burial date. He did say that on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mike.
I'm
go ahead, Trisha.
I was just
don't
going
know what
to
to
say,
say.
I'm pretty flexible on this one. I think, as far as not knowing the extent of kind of what's in there, I think Cliff had mentioned there may be nothing in there at all, right? No bodies, no burials. or there might be more than one that we just don't know. And so we kind of have to proceed with what we know or what we suspect, the best guess. And then obviously be approaching that area even outside the fence with all care and caution, as anybody would around any state when you come across these things. But how I think the question is that in the examples we were shown, they were kind of 2 examples of benches made from the wood. And then there were 2 examples of a crosscut with dates outlined. And I think it's about when we saw those, where were we envisioning that chart, that slice of a log, and that if they do that it was just one idea, obviously, but if we do something like that, where would that be taking place? Like, it could be at the actual stump that you can get up close to, but not cross the fence and look at, hey, here's the tree and here's where things are marked. It could be out next to the marker or informational, I forget what he called it, stand talking about the gravesite. It could also be something right next to it talking about the tree. It could be inside the building, talking about this tree. Like, so I think it's about how did we envision it when we looked at that slide, and do we want to preclude any one of those possibilities at this point in time, or do we want to preserve all those possibilities until we figure it out, right? I mean, again,
I think that's a really excellent, powerful point, right? Because it's right on the front of the school. We're coming into it, and this is what we see. Is that how we want to present it, right? I think that's spot on. And as I'm envisioning this, what I see is inside the grave site itself, it's a grave site, and it needs to be honored that way with the proper signs, etc. But I love the idea of taking that tree and kind of amplifying it upon kind of the vision of the school in a more kind of honorary way that's separate from the grave site. And how you do that, I'm not a design professional. Deepa, you might have ideas, and others, the applicant may have some ideas. Mm-hmm. But I do love this idea of kind of coming into the school and having that very positive honorary role, whether it's a bench or a site cut or something, not immediately next to the grave site, but prior to seeing the grave site. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't think we should be starting out with the gravesite right in front of the school, is what I'm trying to say. The gravesite, I think, needs to be set to have its honorary solitude and peacefulness separate from the primary entrance point and all the attention that comes with that.
Would it be, this might be way off base, but would it be appropriate to have, the tree would need to be cut down early in the construction process? Would it be appropriate to cut the tree down to a certain level, 6 feet or whatever, to a certain level, and then for this design of the educational component of the signage, of the fence, of these things to continue forward during that time? So we're giving them direction right now. And then there's a lot more thinking to do about what this educational component becomes. And I'm wondering, this is the tricky part, could we suggest, because again, I'm not sure this is something we want to come back to the planning board. Like, I'm not a historian, is this something that maybe we would ask the design team, Eddie and his team, to work with the Ashland Historical Society or and the school, because they're a part of the educational component, in order to create a design that both respects the history, which is Ashland, and the educational and the owner of the site, which is the school. Throwing that out there, kind of getting it off the planning board's plate.
I think that's an interesting idea, and it got me thinking, like, can we use that wood for, I know that we have that wonderful electric sign that we just agreed upon. Can we somehow utilize that wood to sort of showcase some beauty of this new building in some way? Maybe there's some kind of way we can implement that as well, whether it's inside the building or at the entrance, or using that wood as a way to kind of find direction, little signs around the fields.
Yeah, I certainly think that it's going to be beneficial for to take the tree down, and then we can evaluate what's the quality of the lumber from that tree. It could be have some structural issues or something, but certainly, Tricia, to your point, let us get to the point where we understand the quality of the wood, the volume of wood that we have, and then it's going to be easier to kind of connect the dots between how can we use the wood, is it a bench, is it a sign, and obviously certainly the educational part of it. It'd be great to have obviously folks in the school kind of start to weigh in or seeing what other opportunities they are. But I think step one really is what is the quality of the wood that we're working with, and then we can move on from there. But that really is kind of step one.
So I think we're trying to move towards conditions into our document that we're moving towards, taking a vote on and executing in our next meeting. So I think this all sounds great, and I hope we do it, and I think we should do it all, as much or all of it as possible. But how do we come back to, how are we conditioning this removal of this tree?
So here's one condition we need, that it belongs to the town, period. We're not handing it over to anyone, right?
Yeah.
The other trees that are coming down on that property, as far as I understand, are going to be handed over to the contractor who's bringing them down. And there's an offset savings to the town in doing that, right?
So an additional condition.
So I think an additional condition is that this tree is the town, it belongs to the town, period.
Yep. And so the wood harvested from the removal of this tree is the property
of the town of
Ashland.
Yep. And then based on the conditions of that, based on the condition of that tree, recommendations will be made we need to figure out who that is. Who do we want recommendations to be made for? Is it the design committee?
I think there's already a committee for the Mendez school, so I think they should be the one. In my eyes, there's already a committee formed that may be appropriate to take a look at.
So in light of the circumstances of how this tree came to be an issue, I would suggest that the historical commission be one of those committees to be considered, have their voice be heard relative to what happens to that tree. That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
As one of the groups, maybe it's both the building, maybe it's both the group that Peter mentioned, but I would say that one of the public comments we heard, which I agree with, is that we can learn a lot from this. And one of those things is we can hear from other groups that have a say. And part of what we're supposed to do as a planning board is evaluate historical assets and value, if you will, of these decisions. And so I think it'd be a great move to say this belongs to the town of Ashland, this tree, and the historical commission should be part of the determination of how to honor that tree at the site of the Mendez school. That's our ideal, right? Or at other town properties. And I kind of feel that that's where it belongs. I think that tree belongs with the historical commission, and frankly, no one else.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of, I think the tree absolutely can belong to the town. I think it's a matter of working with the building committee or the school committee, the actual, the owners of all that ground outside of the burial area. So if we're putting, for instance, a wood bench, now that wood bench is being located on school property. So which is in the school committee's jurisdiction. So so it's obviously going to be a collaborative effort between the town and the school. So the historical commission say, and the school committee.
And if I just may add, we're happy to work with anyone throughout the process of anything, just as it relates to the educational component. That is that the school committee actually has funding capabilities relative to curricular things. That is 100% the district employees that have that. So I just want to make sure we're talking the same language. As we can't condition it that an outside group has the ability to decide educational opportunities and things like that. Happy to work with anyone and come up with the best ideas for things, but just want to make sure that distinction is drawn. The building committee can't tell the administrators in the district what to do with their curriculum and educational components, and I want to make sure that's out there, right?
Why don't we split this tree, right? So it belongs to the town of Ashland, and we would like that it be used first at the property, right? And that will be discussed between the applicant, the experts here, and the school committee, right? And the building committee, and that the historical commission also have a role so that the non-educational component of how this tree will be used will have some say from the historical commission.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of naming, it's kind of just naming groups that would have a good voice and something to contribute in this process, both because they control the property, a different group controls the educational component, a different group really knows most about the history of Ashland. And then there's the component of just, hey, is this wood going to be any good at all? You know, once we get it. So
the tree's been identified as healthy and in good condition, right?
And there's a lot of it. So
yeah.
So there should be some that's worth it. Yeah.
I think it's kind of like what happens in that building and outside of that building relative to learning, it belongs to the educational experts, right? But the history of that tree and the asset of that tree belongs to the people of Ashland. And we need to honor that history as best as we can. It belongs to us. That's a condition. That tree is ours. It's not going to be given over to anyone else. It's a town asset. And I think we can condition that the substantial component of this tree should be used to beautify this property, whether it's i.e. benches, et cetera. And you know, a component of that tree can be educational, something like that, some language like that that gives flexibility to all involved, honoring both the importance of the historical preservation piece and the educational component, giving everyone some flexibility to have a say and a role to play.
I think it'll be a team effort to come up with the best solution. And can you just write that up real quick, Peter?
Yeah, I'll take care of it tomorrow, Friday.
I'm happy to take a try. I can do it now. I'm going to mute myself and try to write it. I can listen and write at the same time. I'll be right back. I'm here writing.
Okay. So other conditions, so leaving aside conditions around removal of the tree, I think other conditions, so specific language around, again, we understand that theory goes without saying, but specific language around the identification of human remains outside of the existing memorial site. So there was some draft language that was presented. I had a couple of minor tweaks to it, but I think, do you want me to, should I read that now or just?
Yeah, go ahead. I thought Peter had a draft in there of that one, right?
Yeah, that was
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share my screen. Well, it's fine. So if the applicant at if the applicant at any time during construction exhumes, and I added, or identifies human remains on the locus in the particular area surrounding the Francis Poole Memorial Site, all work shall immediately halt, and the applicant shall notify the town of Ashland and the Massachusetts Historical Society. The applicant shall follow the Department of the Interior standard regarding the handling of human remains. And this is the additional sentence I've added. The applicant shall follow any and all Commonwealth of Massachusetts laws or regulations regarding the handling of human remains. So Department of Interior would be the federal standard. I don't know what the standards are within the Commonwealth, but I'm sure there are rules and regulations. So
Does the
just to preface this, I'm not an expert on human remains. I haven't been on a project that we came across one. So if anybody, has any information, please be happy to share it, I would say. But I'm sorry, Tricia.
I was just going to ask if the care taken it seems like this component is about preserving this cube of land, say, given that it goes down. And the other condition we were just talking about is about the tree. Is there something, where does the kind of the treatment of the land surface and the actual tombstone, where does that fit? Did we put that in with the tree, that they're following all those regulations? You know what I mean?
I'm not sure that our decision can mandate the maintenance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's in the purview of the school. Like we can't dictate maintenance, right? I think the document identified is a great resource, and I would ask the school look to that as it looks to maintain the site in the future. But I mean, what I just read is really more just trying to say, to the extent that any human remains are found outside of the identified memorial site, we're going to follow federal, state, and local law. We'll notify the town and notify the Mass Historical Society. That's the Cliff Note version of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Right? And I do have a couple of other pieces here with regard to this. The applicant shall make all necessary preparations and take all necessary precautions to protect both the Francis Poole Memorial Site and the memorial monument to Paul Falcone once both building permits have been issued and work has begun. Piling of material near the site so as to damage them or diminish them will not be permitted. Stormwater runoff should be given special consideration at every stage of the building process, and all precautions should be taken by the applicant to prevent damage to these sites. I mean, I would expect this to happen anyway, but we're trying to be very clear in our decision that this really needs to be thought about. And then the last piece is the planning board acknowledges that the memorial monument to Paul Falcone sits outside the quote limit of work as defined on the final submitted plans. This fact, will not in itself will not protect this memorial site. Applicants should give full consideration and care to protecting this memorial monument as well. So, looking at the drawings, the Paul Falcone Memorial is literally just outside the definition of work here, but it's a large construction site. The lot's going to go on for a long time, and I think we're just trying to say, look, let's be careful of that as well. Let's not do anything to diminish or damage that in this process.
Hey, Joe, may I just ask a question about the Falcone Memorial? What's the rationale behind that?
I mean, it's the rationale is really very simple. I mean, would we want a dump truck load of dirt dumped next to it and sitting there next to that site for a period of time, like where it could erode down onto that? Like, look, the memorial to Mr. Falcone, right? It's school property. It's the it's the school's memorial, right? All I'm trying to say is, while we may all acknowledge that that's important to us and we want to take care of it, like, I think we're just trying to call out to the construction process that, hey, let's be careful not to damage these things.
Okay, because I'm thinking with other memorials on other pieces of school property, we might end up moving some of those things,
And
right?
that's totally fine. Yeah.
Okay, because this is not a gravesite. Just let's be clear. I did a lot of research going back. Right.
Yeah. I know. No, I'm not in any way trying to limit or change the school's right to move these things or do whatever it wants. I'm more just saying is, to the extent that it sits there for the next 3 years while this construction goes on, let's
try to protect where it is.
Let's try to protect it, right? Let's just try not to damage it and show it respect. That's all. And if you say, hey, we're moving it before, it's completely, yeah.
Yeah, and I think what Jim's getting at is exactly that. We have a policy on memorials, naming things and stuff like that. And so as long as it doesn't preclude us from, if the right thing to do is to
put it in a different position,
to put it on a post or to do something different with it, then we want to make sure that the school has the option to do that. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not in any way trying to infringe on that or change that. I'm just trying to say, if it stays there, let's show it some respect, right?
Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. So anyway, those were wordy proposals there. So to the board, how do we want to do these or not do these? Up to what you think.
I have to confess, I was multitasking, but I was listening, and I support Joe's sentiment. And so I know that's not particularly helpful in drafting this, but I agree. And I'm happy, if somebody's willing to take a stab at drafting that component, I'm willing to help kind of rework it. But
Tricia, Deepa, I read from paragraphs that I wrote. I can send it to Peter. I can put it up on the screen now. What do we want to do?
I think if you already have a text and it's close to being there, it's 10 o'clock and I'm a morning person and I start going downhill at 5. So you're asking a lot of my brain. And I think we get these things to Peter as complete as we can, whether it's in that form right now, the things I have, what Anna is writing, and we have him put it in one document that we then all have a chance, including Lakshmi, have a chance to really read through thoroughly, make some tweaks, hopefully just tweaks, and then we'll be in a place we're all comfortable.
I think that's fair, but we have not, hopefully I didn't miss this by multitasking. We haven't yet discussed the potential replanting of other trees, right? Either at the gravesite or near the gravesite. So that is another condition that we may want to talk through, right?
I thought that,
or was that resolved?
No, I thought, and maybe it's not resolved enough. I thought my question was about, at the time we were discussing that, was that that whole area, including the type of fence, the signage for the burial site, the exact location of trees and size of trees, all of that area, we have an idea now, kind of a schematic design is what I would call it, about what that area would be, but that design is not 100% complete. And it's kind of a working, it may vary depending on some of the other decisions that are made with benches that might get put in from that wood, or where the plaque might go, or so it's in flux a little bit. And so I don't see it as part of a condition, I guess. It's part of the design process. Can Eddie weigh in on that? I see he is.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, knowing that to frame it as a schematic design, which it is a plan that is showing an intent of how we see this landscape being resolved, how we see this landscape kind of meeting the building. And as we move into kind of the next stages of design, then we would refine that by calling out specific plant types, plant sizes, plant spacing. And so, but it would adhere to kind of the overall spirit of that schematic design that we presented this evening. I could see, is there an opportunity for maybe one or two other shade trees or something like that? But certainly, I think, Trish, you mentioned it earlier tonight, that we want to create a garden setting for this gravesite and this memorial. So that, and we will take that schematic design and essentially provide more information, so then the contractors can go out and get the exact plants, the exact size, species, and plant it accordingly.
I think we could put in there, as discussed, that the for lack of a better term, the showcase tree.
Okay, yeah,
in that arrangement would
or a specimen tree. Yep.
Yeah,
Specimen shade tree. Yep. And we can call out that it should be the Quercus alba, the white oak. I think that's good. I mean, we talked about tree sizes. I'm actually happy if you wanted to put in a larger tree caliper size. We had this discussion earlier tonight, but so in terms of if there is specifics that the planning board would like to see incorporated into that garden setting, we are open, I guess, is how I would like to present it.
My focus here is purely on that showcase specimen tree being a white oak, and trying to follow the lineage of what we had here.
Yep.
Beyond that, I trust the committee to design a garden that is beautifying and great. So for me,
as long as there's an oak tree in proximity, I have nothing else to say on that issue. Really, I know that's hard to imagine, but it's true. I do have kind of a very rough draft of splitting that tree among different priorities. And I know, so I guess I do have one more thing to add. Does the board want me to kind of generally explain it and then send the language through Peter so that we can properly kind of vet it now? Would that be helpful, Joe?
Why don't you take a crack at reading it, and
okay,
so we get the general sense.
Very rough. The tree, obviously there's a condition that it belongs to the town of Ashland, right? The tree can be used for the following purposes, with a priority on the first two. One is highlight the lumber and various design elements at Mindus, whether outside, benches, signs, etc., or inside, part of the murals, artwork within the building, etc., as evaluated by the school board and building committee. The second purpose is highlight the historical significance of the tree via plaque, bench, memorial plaque, sculpture, etc., in proximity to the current gravesite as evaluated by the historic commission. The material is to be shared 50-50 between these two priorities unless these two groups agree to another split. If one of those groups is not utilized, it's 50%. The remainder is used for the third priority, which is use the lumber for other town projects, such as the Valentine Estate, the Warren Barn, per discretion of the town manager and the select board. If the entire tree is needed for the first priority, which is using it at Mindus, the other two priorities are not met, basically. So you're kind of splitting it 50-50, but you're giving the school board a motivation to use the whole thing. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, it sounds.
It belongs
Sounds
where it
thoughtful.
belongs. So I'm trying to honor its location so that it's used ideally at the school. If the school wishes to share it with the historical commission, 50-50, it's there. And if nobody wants it, then the town manager and the select board can use it for other town projects. That's the spirit of it. And I'll throw it to Peter for further discussion.
Yeah, it works for me. I think it's up to the board, it's up to you and the board. I think, if you want to send that draft off to me, I can put it in the decision, draft decision, and work it around, and we can kind of go from there.
I'm trying to find a unique way to reconnect the dots between different constituent groups that perhaps want some voice that could have been raised earlier or could have worked more in partnership earlier.
Yeah, I think those groups would be great to, you know, that in these, especially when we're dealing with the history, that the designers and the building committee can reach out to the historical commission and get some input. And of course, the school will have final determination on what happens at the school. But to get that kind of input, which the committee is valuing.
I'm not sure I'm convinced that the school would have final approval of what happens at the school if it's not a curriculum issue. I'm not convinced on that. I think we have jurisdiction over that site relative to, we're saying that belongs to the town of Ashland. And
what belongs to the town of Ashland? The wood?
The tree, yep.
Yeah, but the wood can be placed anywhere. So the placement of the wood on someone else's property, in this case, the school committee, as regulated by the state, is very much, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, or anyone else on the call, but I think according to the state, the school committee is very much in control of the school committee, of the school property. So we can't give that control to the historical commission. We can give their input, definitely, and the town can own the tree, but the school is going to control what gets set on their property. So I do not believe the planning board has any voice in that.
No, and I agree. You know, I understand your concern, Trish. You know, obviously the school committee they have the authority over their property, obviously. However, in this case, we're going through a site review process, and so yes, we do have review, and we do have the ability to put conditions upon. So I think, in the spirit of everyone working together, I think that's what we're trying to. I think that's what Ann is trying to hit here. Is we're in the spirit, we're all working together, and I think we can mention in the condition that the applicant seek input from the historical commission, seek input from the select board, seek input from whomever in town to try to come up with the best idea to use this wood or the material in education for educational purpose, i.e. number one at the midday school.
Yeah, I completely concur with that, Peter, and we're happy to consult. But I think the one part of it, and I can't recall the exact wording, but that I was a little bit concerned with is it seemed like part of it was giving another body the authority over something to do with the project and the site. And I had the same concern, I think, that Tricia just mentioned, but we're happy to consult with anyone. But I just have a concern around, you know, I don't know if the planning board has the ability to provide someone else the authority over components of the property, right? And I don't think that's the intent, and so we're happy to have a condition that says we'll consult and seek input from anyone, really.
Yeah, I think we've nailed it down, and I think at this point we can, you know, Andrew, if you want to send me that draft.
I'll send you that draft. The intent was to find common ground and get out of the power struggle, if you will, between authority and move towards a consensus of a community resource and how to honor both the history of it and the educational relevance of it.
And I think those are the two most important words: history and education.
Correct. So that was the intention of the paragraph, rather than somehow removing the authority over property. I was under the impression benches, history were in fact being honored, and that this would not be that controversial. I'll send it to the board and we can flush it out more when we're more rested. It is getting late. I think the intention is actually quite constructive and in no way an attack on school board authority.
I agree 110%. I think it's just a matter of we're doing the right thing, and history and education, the two most things here, right? And to move it forward, to move forward. I going back to the other point, which I think is a great point that Trish brought up, is we first have to understand the materials that are going to be harvested out of the tree and what can be the best use, I would say. So, and then the question about what can be built, which would be the most that would reflect history and education to the best extent for the town, for the Clockers.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. I think it's a strong, more than a start to this very tricky condition. So.
Okay. Awesome. All right.
Are there any others that
I think we did the best that we could under the circumstances tonight. I think we covered all the conditions that we had laid out before. I feel comfortable that we can get those drafts and work through it with our full board at the next meeting.
Okay. I think, at this point, obviously we can continue the public hearing to September 9th. That's going to be our next planning board meeting. And then in the meantime, next 2 weeks, I'll continue to build up. I think I have a good outline of the decision, which I have included. There's some documents I do need to add to it, and then obviously update as a revised plan set is going to be submitted. But I think at this point, I can really move forward and go into the important details of the decision, which would be the facts and the findings and the conditions.
And I know you have a lot on your plate, Peter, but if we can get those like as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm going to try to be
helpful.
I'm going to try to get them out by Wednesday or Thursday of next week. I think that's going to be my time frame as I get back into as I get things moving forward. So it seems to me I'm on an every other week schedule, but I'm not going to go into detail about the workflow right now. But I can try to do it. I think Wednesday or Thursdays are very manageable task at this point.
That puts us at the halfway point to the next meeting. So I think that's as late as we should go, if possible.
Could I mention a couple of things in the decision that you had circulated, Peter, that we may want to address in light of prior consensus?
Sure.
I think page 7 of hopefully I have the right thing that I'm holding. Page 7 of the certificate of approval special permit dealt with paragraph C deals with filtering of water, capturing of water. I think we have a consensus that our decision is contingent on the Conservation Commission. So we may want to just flush out that paragraph so it's clear that.
I already started to do that today when I was in the office, and I was starting to flesh out some other elements such as historical features on the site, which you mentioned.
Okay. Cool.
But just as a skeleton, I got it out there and I reorganized the boilerplate conditions, and I tried to move as much forward as I could. That was manageably possible.
Great. Thank you.
So I know I sent back, I looked at those documents, the site plan review and the special permit, and sent back edits to Peter. Is that, Peter, what you would like? It sounds like Anna has some suggested edits. Is that
just send them,
everyone to do?
So everyone just send them directly to me. Obviously we don't want any OML regulations, so just send them directly to me, and I will edit the document and send it back out to everybody, and so we can kind of communicate that way. Yeah, but email, Word would be great.
Okay, I'll send that little paragraph to Pete. I literally just threw it together. I think we can flesh it out more next time.
Okay, yeah, and I can work on it, and obviously I'll be working on it next Monday and Tuesday of this week, so.
Is there anything else we need to do, Joe?
I don't have any other conditions, like the reference to the Conservation Commission and our approvals contingent on that approval was kind of contained in the body of the site plan review and the special permit. So I think we can check that. We can double check that.
Yeah, I can find it.
I don't have.
I think we had reached consensus on the parking that we had all.
Yeah.
We're fine with that.
Conditions around that, right?
No.
Yep. So I'm not aware. I don't have any other draft conditions at this exact second for that where I think consensus building at this point. I think we've gone through them, the most sensitive ones. You guys, you ladies seem to agree, I believe. I'm not hearing I missed anything at this
I think
point.
the other topics we had consensus on, I mean, majority, maybe not full consensus, but majority on.
Yeah. So, but for the next meeting, Peter, I think we would want to have an update to the drawings for the site. The thing specifically identified was the positioning of the sign and having that located. Any of the updates discussed, anything that's coming out of Concom that can get worked into those plans, like it'd be great to have it as to the extent there's any modifications there, it'd be great to have those worked in. So I think
I think anything that's relative to the conditions that we are just discussing, so should be made sure that they're in the drawings that are part of the approval process.
Okay.
So not hearing anything else, I think we would entertain a motion. Before I do this, we would continue this to Thursday, September 16th. Is that correct?
I thought it was 9th.
No, the 9th, Joe.
You're correct. You're right. I'm sorry. So we continue this to Thursday, September 9th. Is this going to be the first item on the agenda?
Yeah, we'll put this first on the docket, I would say.
Okay. So entertain a motion to continue the public hearing, site plan review and special permit for 90 Concord Street to Thursday, September 9th, 2021 at 7:15 p.m.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor, roll call vote.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Joe Rivertone, aye. The motion passes 4-0-0. I believe the only other item that we were going to do tonight was just the review of the OML violation from our last meeting. And I believe, Peter, you have circulated a draft.
Before we do that, Joe, I think we have to make motions continue to the other elements that are on the agenda.
Fair.
Which would
Apologies.
No, just not just to dot the I's and cross the T's on this one. The second item that we had as a continuance would be 100 Chestnut Street. This is the Village of the Americas. We do have to make a motion to continue this until September 9th. And I would say maybe if we can make a time at 8 o'clock, if that would be appropriate.
Okay.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor, roll call vote.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Joe Rivertone, aye.
All right,
Motion passes 4-0-0. And then we have 355 West Union.
Yeah, I think with this one, I don't know when we'll get a plan in, but I'm working.
Should we go out to the following meeting from September?
I'm going to do that. That's going to be September 23rd.
Okay, got it. So entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on 355 West Union Street site plan review to Thursday, September 23rd at what time? At 9 p.m.
Sure, 9 p.m.
There's a second.
Oh,
Seconded.
Trisha Kendall, I.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye. The motion passes 4-0-0.
The next
McGunko
one,
Road.
McGunko Road. This one I would ask the planning board to hear on the 9th, if possible. This is an application. I know it's in front of us, but they did send in revised drawings of the building. So they, however, so I think they've asked to be on the 9th.
So we would do 9:30 p.m. because
I would
we
do
have
9:30. Yep.
Okay, so entertain a motion to continue 0 McGunko Road site plan review to Thursday, September 9th at 9:30 p.m.
So moved.
Seconded.
Trisha Kendall, I.
Ed?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Deepa?
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Rubertone, aye. The motion passes 4-0-0. The
And
A
then-
and R.
Yeah, so that's going to be continued to the September 9th meeting. That's going to be kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with, it's a different application, I would say, than the 100 Chestnut, because it's coming from the actual owner of the Fafford Realty Company. But I would probably put that at 9 o'clock if possible.
So entertain a motion to continue the review of the A and R plan for 100 to 130 Chestnut Street to Thursday, September 9th at 9 p.m.
Do we already have something at 9 p.m. or?
No, we have, the 9 p.m. was moved to the 23rd.
23rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then so moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Deepa Venkatai. Sorry, Anna.
Tesmanitsky, aye. That's okay.
Joe Rubertone, aye. Motion passes 4-0-0.
Okay, and the last item on our agenda is the planning board received an open meeting law violation on August 13th, 2021. Earlier, this has been shared with town council, and town council has drafted a response. And I did circulate that to the planning board today. Was everyone able to see that response?
Yes.
So the next steps would be that response will be sent to the secretary. The Secretary of State's office. However, if everyone had the ability to review that, it would be a motion. I would ask him for a motion to accept the response, which would allow the town to move forward in addressing that OML violation.
Do we need the full board here for that?
I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question.
And Peter, I'm not sure I received it. I'm having some trouble. I'm having some trouble with that email address if it went to my.
Peter, what time did you send it?
I sent it around, I believe, one in between 1 and 2 today.
I did read it. I'm happy to discuss it. I just don't know if we can do that without the full board. If we can, let's do it.
I mean, I think we can.
Okay.
I'm fine to do it without the full board. I mean, that's my opinion, but I'm also the subject of it. So I'll be glad to defer to the opinion of the rest.
Are we required to address it today, Peter, or would it be?
From a time standpoint, I don't know. I can.
Can we address it, and then if we needed the full board, you'll tell us and address it again? Is that possible?
Yes, that's possible.
Okay. So why don't we address it, and then if we need to come back, you'll tell us.
Is it possible it can be forwarded to me? I don't think I got it.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I will forward it to you right now, Tricia.
I'm having trouble with that email address.
Which,
Either other one, just not the Ashland one. It just doesn't seem to come through, unfortunately.
yeah, my emails have been kind of funky today.
It could definitely be on my end. I'm just not getting
so
something.
the one thing that I see with regard to the complaint, the complainant indicates that this was intentionally sent to all planning board members. That's the complainant's opinion. That was not my intention to do so. I mean, he's entitled to file his complaint however he wants to, so I can't, that's his opinion. But I would refute that it was intentionally done. I intended only to respond to Mr. Morgan. So does that change anything, Peter?
I do not believe so.
Yeah, Peter, are we being asked to, what are we being asked to do today relative to that?
So I think we are asked to accept the response as written. And then that can be sent off to the Secretary of State's office.
Okay. Assuming Tricia has had a chance to review it.
I am not, I'm checking my junk mail now. I am just not, I
haven't sent it yet, Tricia.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, I mean, are you going to forward it right now?
No, I got it right here.
Good.
It's going, yep. Going to the PK home.
Okay.
Oh no, immediate future compliance.
Okay, finally.
So Peter, we're discussing approving this as a response to the town would file this with the Attorney General.
I believe it's the Secretary of State's office. They handle all OML violations.
Got it.
Okay, I've read through it.
So my only thought is, since one of our members is a subject of it, as long as you've had a chance, Joe, to convey to us anything that you wish for us to hear, which I think you did, I'm comfortable with passing it on forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. The only piece that I have take issue with, I mean, is that I intentionally copied the board. So it was not my intention to copy the board, but that's what I get for responding to an email during a meeting. So it was an accident, but that's what it is.
I will add that, and I don't know how relevant this is, but I feel like I need to say it. We were in the process of a meeting, and although I multitasked today to draft something, I'm not in the practice of checking my planning board email while in this meeting. So I just wanted to state that on the record. In other words, even however that was sent, it was not visible to me. So the deliberation that is being accused of occurring did not occur. I don't know if that makes any sense, because I didn't see that email until the open meeting document came to me. So in other words, I don't see how a deliberation could have occurred, because we were all in this meeting and I was not reading it. So I don't think I suspect we did not have a majority even looking at our email all at the same time. So for what it's worth.
I appreciate the support. We should just pass this on, and if, you know, whatever the decision is, if I have to redo some training, or whatever I need to do, I'll do, and that's, I'll take my
I
job.
just wanted to be open as to what I was doing during that meeting, which is I was present during the recorded meeting.
Yeah.
Quite present.
Yeah, no, it's a poor practice, and I shouldn't have done it, but yeah. Okay, so I would guess, just as on the subject of this complaint, like, could I ask you, Tricia, to deal with the calling of the vote on this, just for transparency?
Sure. Is it the same as, do I need to entertain a motion?
It's just entertain a motion to accept, you know, to accept the draft response that was written by town council, and then that will allow the town, through the clerk's office, who this open meeting law violation is obviously spearheaded. Will be able to deal with it.
Could I entertain a motion to accept this draft letter prepared by town council in regard to the open meeting law violation?
So moved.
I second that.
A roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Deepa Venkat, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. Passes 4-0-0.
Can I ask a question, Peter, Tricia, Joe, Deepa? I know we're scheduling things for September. Should we, or can we add to our agenda for next time a discussion of the retreat and the scheduling of that, so that it's public record, that it's on the agenda and we actually discuss it? Because we're scheduling September, and unless, I think we have to put it on the agenda in order to properly discuss it, right?
Yeah, so I will put that on the agenda, and actually just to, since I'll take 2 seconds here. So I've kind of done some research about how other committees do retreats and/or meetings. It is a posted meeting. It's always a posted meeting. The location is always posted on that agenda. And then therefore, however, typically they're just not broadcast. However, minutes are typically produced. As typical minutes would be, I would say, for that meeting. So other committees have had retreats in other areas of town, the Warren Conference Center. The planning board could do something, which I may propose is the corner spot, right? To make sure to maybe do a morning outside. Obviously, COVID is still present. If that would be acceptable by everybody, but I will put that on the agenda. And if you have any ideas of where, if you feel comfortable meeting outside versus indoors, please you can email me directly.
And why don't we discuss it? Put it on the agenda. Let's discuss it at the next meeting, and let's wrap this thing for tonight.
Okay.
If you agree, Joe.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Have a great.
I'm done. I'm done.
Always like napping already.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to.
I entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at 10:40 p.m.
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call vote.
Tricia Kendall, aye.
Deepa Venkat, aye.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye. The motion passes 4-0-0. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah. Am I allowed to say something that I haven't seen minutes in a while? Can I?
We have minutes coming. So our minutes are being. Our minutes are subcontracted, and I reached out to the woman today.
Awesome.
And they are coming very soon. The last couple meetings is taking her a little bit.
No worries. I understand. I was just like, I haven't seen them. I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Okie dokie. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.